Okay, now it's doing it. Start again. Sorry.
Okay.
Take two.
Good practice.
Call to order the special board meeting of November 23rd at 6 p.m. Call to order. And this meeting is, I called the meeting just because we have so many things on our agendas that having a couple extra meetings just allows us to have a 3-hour meeting, a couple of them instead of 5-6 hours. So with that, I would, you do roll call.
Chairman Beauchamp.
Here.
Vice Chairman Shraven.
Here.
Board Member Cadwallader.
Here.
Board Member Crawford.
Here.
Board Member Funger.
Here. Okay, so everybody's here. The agenda, is there any changes or anything that you?
Yes, I sent out a benevolence request from Rotary that we need to like to add to the agenda. And then Craig, did you want to add it to the agenda?
No, for this juncture.
All right. All right, so we would just make the recommendation to add benevolence request from Rotary.
Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll motion to approve the agenda with the addition of the benevolence request.
And I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment. Any public comment? Okay, we'll move on to action items.
All right. First up, we've got Mr. Beauchamp here with us from Utility Financial Solutions. We, as you all will recall, we engaged Utility Financial Solutions back in the spring to have them perform a time of use analysis. So with Megan and Julie's help, we have been working with UFS, Mike and Mark, to supply data, go through some different models, tweak some stuff. And what we have here today is the presentation on the results of that study. Following the presentation, there will be time for questions, but we'll be looking for any board feedback, comments, requests for additional information, enough information that we can go back and formally draft rate policies to be added to our rate book, and that would come back to the board for official action to adopt the formal rates. But we'll be looking for feedback today, enough feedback to draft those rates and get them approved so we can start using them. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark. We've got your presentation up here.
Is it okay if I stand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
I want to start by just telling you a little bit about myself. I worked for utilities for almost 40 years. Utility Financial Solutions was formed in 2001. Prior to that, I worked for 3 years at a consulting firm called Baker Tilly, consulting. And then prior to that, I was for about 4 years. After I formed Utility Financial Solutions, we teach cost of service courses, financial planning courses for American Public Power Association, American Gas Association, American Water Works Association. And we've done work in 44 states, including the islands of Guam, several islands in the Caribbean. We're probably from a electric cost of service standpoint, probably the largest in the country. And actually Lowell, I mentioned I worked for another consulting firm. Lowell was the first client back in 1998. Wow, that's what I mentioned. And what I'm here to talk about is time use rates. The electric industry, when we look forward, we have so many opportunities ahead of us as far as they're going to improve growth, improve what's called system load factors, which means flattening out our peaks and our valleys. It's because of electric vehicles, to some degree because of solar, but also because of electrification of buildings. Right now there's 4 states, Michigan, one of these, but that have actually prohibited the extensions of natural gas to new construction. It sounds kind of weird, but it's all because of decarbonization. Because electricity is felt to be better for the environment, than natural gas. So, so you're seeing what
What four states are we talking about?
Massachusetts, California, Washington State, New York.
I was trying to figure out, they must be four states with three codes. There's something else that,
Some cold ones.
but
There's
it
some cold
isn't.
weather states.
There's also 13 states that have laws prohibiting any local government from prohibiting natural gas extensions. It kind of goes with both sides, but the push is to decarbonize natural. And electricity is one way of getting it. So, and now that's the opportunity. The challenges we have is how do we best send the price signal to customers so they use electricity at the proper time. When I first started pricing electric services back in the 90s, I always felt that electricity was, in general terms, priced inelastic. And what that means when we say priced inelastic is that pretty much no matter what the price is, customers are going to use it. They're not going to respond to that price. That's what I thought. I was wrong. They do respond. And when you send them the proper price signal, it's not that they're going to inconvenience themselves. They're not going to do the laundry at 2 o'clock in the morning. What they will do is they'll purchase things to allow them to shift their usage. So what we've seen in the industry is when you get this on-peak, off-peak price differential, for example, there's a 2 times price differential. There's approximately 6 to 12% reduction in residential usage during peak time. That means your peak demands are going to drop. So there's a short-term price elasticity and a long-term. The long-term is as they make more and more investments, they're going to continue to respond better to those price signals. So what I'm here to talk about is, one is how we develop target use rates. I'm trying to give you an overview. I know we have a busy agenda. I'm not going to talk about it I'll try to keep it short. And then I'm going to talk to you about the ideal target use rates. And also a phase-in approach, because when you make a rate structural change, there's winners and there's losers. So the question then becomes, how do we go from where we are today to where we want to be? And what's the plan? From a rate standpoint, we want to probably phase it in. But then there's an implementation process. We don't want to develop a time use rate that everybody's on super. That works pretty well. But from a local level, maybe. So we have to make sure we have systems in place. We want to do a pilot program, make sure we can go. But we've tested the systems properly. Then the question, the next step after that is we need to offer it to customers. How do we want to offer it? We could say we're going to do it on an opt-in basis, which means that customers want the rate, it's there. Consumers didn't do that. They made it what's called opt-out, which means that everybody's on that rate, unless they choose the other rate. And usually from a municipal standpoint, usually they start with opt-in program, and then they eventually move to the opt-out. And so these are all things that I want to talk to you about. We have the rates developed. But the key questions is really, for right now, in my opinion, we have electric vehicles. Our current rate structure doesn't work. And I'll explain why I'm going through. So we may want to just put a time use rate once we go through the pilot program, put it out there so if somebody has an electric vehicle, they can take advantage. And then we can decide what to do with the residential, how we want to do it. So, you can go to the next slide. So what I'm going to talk about is, like I said, how we developed these time use rates. And what we also did is we looked at, and you see this graph that shows how by the different types of rates, or whatever your decision is. You know, obviously from our standpoint, we want to make sure that you make an informed decision with no surprises. You know, and I made mistakes. Those surprises are not fun. And we try to avoid them. So we've done extensive analysis of what the impacts are of these rate cuts. So the very first thing we do is when we develop a time use rate, you have to look at when the peaks occur. Because when your system, at the time of your system peaks, like for example in July, in year one you peaked at 5 o'clock in the evening, 4 o'clock in the evening, 3 o'clock in the evening. So we look at when these peaks occur. We say, okay, we have capacity costs that we have to pay on those peaks. In other words, transmission fees. We're billed transmission based on the peaks that we create the system. So we need to recover it in this time period. So the very first thing is you look at when the peaks occur. And like I said, we look 3 years past the development. So what you're going to see is the on-peak period is going to encompass this time period. That's it. So on the goal. My wife always tells me to cover. So now, one of the things you have to be careful of time of year something. We had identified that July occurs sometime between 4 and 5, 3 and 5. But we put a bit of bandwidth on it for a couple of reasons. One, we don't want to make it too narrow. Because if you make it the time period too narrow, what happens is customers respond to it, and then all of a sudden you're peaking at it. So we don't want to send such a strong price signal that we start chasing the peak. So we put a little bit of buffer around it. That tends to flatten the rate out a little bit. So what we have, first of all, we identified 3 time periods. On-peak, off-peak, and super off-peak. You can give them different names. Some will say on-peak, critical peak, which would be the highest price time, and off-peak. But these we felt from a customer relations standpoint, good names. So in the summer, the on-peak period, the highest price period, is from noon to 7. Then the off-peak, the super off-peak period is from 11 o'clock at night to 5 o'clock in the morning. All the other hours are off, including weekends and holidays. During the winter, we only have 2 time periods. We have off-peak from 5 a.m. until 11 o'clock at night, and then super off-peak from 11 o'clock at night to 5 o'clock in the morning. That's because there's certain costs that are driven only by the summer peaks, not by the winter peaks. Okay. So, and when you look at it from an hour standpoint, like that on-peak, we have 8,760 hours a year. Only 602 hours are it's a very small percentage is actually this higher price period of time. And most of them are super off-peak. They're off-peak hours. That encompasses what, about over 6,000 hours. All these holidays are off. So this, when it comes to power supply costs, when we set the rate, and this is a critical thing, which you'll see how we handle this later, we don't look at what's called your embedded cost. We don't look at your total cost. We look at your marginal cost. What I mean by that is you have, let's say this right, you have an investment in generation, in different parts of the state. And so you get that power, but there's a certain amount of power that you purchase from the market. So the market price of power is your marginal cost. So we want to send price signals based on that marginal cost that we purchase from the market. That's our marginal cost pricing. So, but the problem is, right now today, is that we only price our services on marginal costs. We aren't gonna be able to pay the bills. Because right now, the marginal cost is less than our embedded cost. Although we're projecting right now, it's possible that our marginal cost will go above our embedded cost. They do go up. But, so we have this reconciliation process, because ultimately we have to pay the bills. So, once we identify these marginal costs, we then look at the system revenue and say, okay, what do we need to add to these rates? Or how do we need to change these rates? So that we implement them, we recover our revenue costs. Does that make sense? But by doing that, we're sending marginal cost-based pricing. In other words, the differentials between on-peak and off-peak. Right. So, right now, this is your average rate, post by cost, that you get that you pay. This is actually what it costs. This is what you're charging customers with post. But this is your actual cost. So you can see that during this window, you're paying $120 a megawatt hour, but you're only recovering about $65. During this period of time, you're only paying $20, but you're charging customers $60. So obviously, what do we want to do? From the customer standpoint, we want to take this and make the use call over here and less here. We want them to fill in these values and bring down this peak. And that's what we're trying to do with pricing. That makes sense. And by doing that, it benefits everybody. Customers now have the opportunity to save money on electricity. Before, they used energy. They paid that $60. Now, they have the opportunity to pay less money. And it's a win-win. They save money, and we save money. We save money because we don't have the higher post cost. So it's a win-win. So these are your current rates. Now, this is residential. So the residential revenue requirement is 2.1 million. So remember I said that once we identify the marginal costs, we then tweak them to make sure they bring back to the 2.1 million. Now in the process of doing that, it's producing these rates. So the winter off-peak, we kept it the same, and the winter super off-peak is from 8.1 drops to 3.4 cents. During the summer, if you look at the big thing is the on-peak. Currently at 8.2 cents, we're bringing it to double that, 16.6. Remember, it's only $600 a year. But the off-peak is currently charging 8 cents, and it's less than 3 cents. So you see customers now have an incentive to use energy management. Now we're not proposing that these rates be implemented with all the residential customers, but it might be something the board wants to consider as offering this rate as an opt-in in the near future for electric vehicles, to incentivize electric vehicles.
So, and maybe you're gonna present this later. So what things, I understand what you're saying. What things can a consumer do to lower their peak cost so that it's much more balanced? And again, when you're looking at weather, I mean, so you're saying winter and summer and you got air conditioning. Well, you're not going to have the air conditioning in the winter, but you got. So, what things can a consumer do to help level that out?
There's several different types of enabling devices that allows them to show. One of them, the most common, is set like where they have the ability to set that with thermostat or control the hours that they're on lights. Not in a way that's gonna make their home excessively cold or excessively hot. You know, there's usually limitations around that, but it allows them to kind of bring usage down when temperature is shifting hours. There's other types of enabling devices also. There's even like heat pumps, water heat pumps for air conditioning and heating, pumping water underground, which uses more energy during the off-peak hours than does during the on-peak hours. There's several different types of enabling devices similar to that allows customers control. And sometimes it's just a matter of knowing. Customers know that this is an expensive time period and it's convenient to them. They'll shut the use. As long as it's convenient. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm a Green Bay Packer fan. If the Super Bowl is on and I have a choice between paying, I don't care what the price of electricity is, let's put it that way. I'm going to click that light switch on to watch the game. If they ever get the Super Bowl. But you know, from that perspective, it's the value of electricity is enormous. I mean, when you think about it. But as long as it's convenient to shift usage, when you look at the price of electricity, it turns $1,900. Average price is over $1 a kilowatt, unadjusted for inflation. Over $1. Okay. Nowadays, the average only kind of 30 cents. But if it's convenient, they'll shift. Now,
And what you're showing us right now is strictly residential?
correct.
Is there a industrial, commercial component also?
That can be easily applied, because we have.
Because again,
we have
I
method-
I just see where commercially, where time of use, where you could, okay, we're gonna reduce the amount of people on our first shift and we're gonna go to third shift, or, you know, again, conceptually, I just see.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think that once we get through this, and I think for the next year we're looking at going for more cost service. As part of that, we can develop time use rates for the large customers.
There's definitely other considerations at that level too. Your bill impacts to, there's fewer customers. Here with residential, I don't say you play the law of averages, but you have a more typical customer and different usage profiles at the residential level, where at the industrial level it's very unique to each individual customer. So there's other challenges, other considerations when you do get to that level. And from a who receives the price signal becomes not difficult. It can be challenging to overcome because the company receives the price signal, and how they react and what they do impacts their employees. I've typically in previous places found that they're hesitant to move because it disrupts so many lives. And when we design rates for those classes anyways, you take into other considerations. Correct me if I'm wrong or anything else, but or anything, but it's a very different world to navigate.
They have a demand charge component, and there's pieces of that demand that we leave in the demand, and pieces of that demand that we roll into energy. So it's a little bit, it's not that difficult to develop, it's just a little bit different process. I do want to mention one thing.
I got one thing, I'm sorry, what Michigan cities has walked into this program? Who's established at what you're telling us we should do in the future? Because there's somebody in Michigan that I could Google and look at that's already in the process to, they've already rolled it out and see how, if the people were with pitchforks and torches at the door of their municipal. Yeah.
Well, Traverse City.
Traverse City?
It's the only one that we've developed so far. We're definitely on the leading edge from municipals, not leading edge from, you know, consumers has, well, a couple million customers. Their time of use rate, their on peak somewhere is 15 cents, their off peak's 10. They'll have two times rates.
But with a caveat on that, they also have a distribution. They've unbundled their rates, where ours are all a bundled rate, so they add 4.5 cents for distribution to move the power to the house. So I always say that because our rates are still very, very attractive compared to theirs, even though what we're looking at in that 14, 15 cents isn't, that's not their whole rate, where this includes more components. This isn't everything, but.
And the other thing is, a couple things to think of. First of all, that becomes part of the program. How do we roll it out? One of the things to always remember, though, too, is time of use is not something that customers have difficulty understanding the concept of. It's something that they experience in their day-to-day life. I mean, I grew up a long time ago. Remember the 1980s? The
Yeah.
long distance telephone charges, on-peak and off-peak rates.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they had matinees and movie theaters. Hotel prices are different on the weekends than are in the week. You know, there's a lot of time differentiated price signals with airlines pricing, you know, that are based upon demand. So it's not a concept that they're aware of. So it's very easily adaptable. There's other things I'd like to do with rates in the long term that are difficult. This, to me, is easy. Then when I look even further down the road, where the rates are probably about 5, 10 years. So, and like I said, consumers are relatively really happy. And they pretty much put, except 2 million customers on June 1st of this year.
So those rates were implemented, that if the customer didn't change their behavior, their annual bill would stay the same.
Theoretically, yes.
I mean, not with any weather, but.
Theoretically, it stays the same. We'll show you this version. We have that. Now, one of the things, if you didn't want to go all the way, that was, personally, I don't think I'm always a little conservative when it comes to, you know, kind of go slower. So we did different phase-in periods. And in other words, this is your current rates, and to implement this in 3 phases. Where you want these phases, you want 1 year or 2 years, that's obviously a board decision. But we can say, okay, in year 1, we're going to go from the current rate structure and move toward these time use rates in a very slow fashion. You can see that like somewhere on peak rate goes from 22 to 11, 14 to 16 cents. And do that in 3 phases. We try to minimize the impacts as much as possible. And then we have a 2-tier phase where you look at it in summer on peak, goes from 8 cents, 12.5 cents to 16 cents.
So, I guess I'm having a little hard understanding it, or what the, so what I'm seeing is, so, and maybe this is just so that we can compare apples to apples. I mean, we're looking at the same revenue, whether it's what we're doing currently or what we're doing if we did time of use. So in my simplistic mind is saying that, so it's pay me now or pay me later type situation. It's still ending out at the same amount. What advantage is it for light and power, and more importantly, what advantage is it, what enhancements, or what is the ratepayer going to get out of it? Because what you're throwing up here, for me, I'm just looking at, well, bottom line, it's the same amount of money, it's pay me now, pay me later. And I guess that's what I'm needing you to lead me through.
No, that is a great question, I'm glad you asked it. We designed the rates to show you that's what we're doing. But what we're not showing you is if a customer responds. The customer responds to these price signals. They say, okay, I'm gonna shift this usage from the on-peak period to the off-peak. They're gonna say, this number's gonna go down, but your expenses are gonna go down. But I say, no, theoretically, that's it. So it's a win-win. That's where the savings is, that's where the benefit is. And a price signal like this, when you have this kind of a differential, you're probably gonna get, I would guess, about a 10% reduction by residential customer with this price signal from in the first year.
And
In
you
the
saw-
long term, probably as much as 20%.
So what would a 10% decrease in non-peak look like overall for this revenue?
Where would low, well, I didn't calculate out, but it would give, if revenue would drop, the savings would go down the same. Power supply price, because it's all in the market.
Another conceptual, your philosophical concept to consider is the reduction in subsidization. You know, the last time we did a 5-year rate study, there was a big focus on helping minimize the subsidization between classes. Time of use rates help align costs within a class. So if you have high user, you know, the customers that concentrate their usage on peak are actually not contributing proportionally as much as those customers that have they're more energy intensive off peak. So right now, this is all blended average of the entire class, but there is subsidizations going on inside of a class based on how individuals use electricity and when they use electricity. So it's another step in trying to align revenues with how we incur costs, so that we're not asking you, the person that if somebody's really energy intensive on peak, some of those times, some of that energy is at a negative margin, but we make it up for sales in the off peak, so that customer that's energy intensive off peak is actually subsidizing that customer that's energy intensive on peak. So this is just an additional alignment from a public power standpoint. It's an alignment of cost and revenues.
In theory, but in theory, long term, that would slow down the increase of rates, right?
Yes.
Because we're not increasing the peak as fast as our overall growth is increasing.
You know, you were talking about, I mentioned enabling devices earlier. Some of the enabling devices are just simply energy efficiency programs. I said 10%, 20%, but some of that 10% doesn't all go into this bucket. Some of it just goes right internally because of energy efficiency. When you look at energy efficiency programs, what it does is it reduces customers' usage, residential customers especially, reduces their usage at the time of the peak hours, which is 6 to 8 o'clock at night. And so it's reducing it more there than percentage-wise, and it reduces kilowatt hours. So they're reducing more than the 16.6 cents. So they're getting more benefit when they implement energy efficiency. So that's part of the reason why time of use is where the industry is headed. Promote energy efficiency, promote usage during off-peak periods, which right now is when a lot of wind is being used. So again, decarbonization. And the harder we can make a load, what's called load factor, the better off as an industry we're going to be when we lower our rates for everybody.
So let me ask you this, so I think I know the answer, but so if I'm a ratepayer and I don't change the way I use energy currently, my bill is my bill typically going to be more?
We will.
Well, your summer bill.
Well, in there.
What year? Yeah, if you're low
Especially if she's
I'll
at
say,
peak hours.
it depends on,
If you're like
I
me,
think if you go to
we
the next
down.
slide, if you
I was
go
gonna-
down to the.
I don't say, I think,
I mean, I run my dishwasher on like a 4-hour
Things
delay,
next
so it runs at 10 o'clock.
go,
Yeah, that's
So
what
I get no
mine.
benefit.
I can come back to this.
go one more.
Oh, one more.
One more, this way?
Oh,
Am I jumping ahead? Is that what I'm doing?
Well, no, well, we're actually going, yeah, it's kind of included.
You know, I can't tell you specifically because we didn't pull up your research, but this is your residential customer that are in there. So, like, it's hard to read this because I don't like it. This is the zero number here. And this is the impacts on customers. This is going to the full tonnage. So some customers could see as much as a 10% increase. Some customers could see as much as a 10% increase. But they all fall within that plus or minus 10%. It's pretty good, actually.
And everybody that falls below that line right now is subsidizing those that are currently above the line.
So I'm not sure which doc you are on this.
I'm tired.
The one right
I'm the highest guy.
As soon as he puts his Christmas lights go down.
So this is if you went to the full country swing. You can see that there isn't that much swing. I really was expecting it to be a little more. If you go to page 1 and page 2, this is on the residential, you phase it in 2 time limits. This is just an impact on page 1, but you can see it limits it plus or minus 5%. So even though we're doubling the on-peak rate, because we're lowering all the other, the off-peak is so much. It's not, the customers are not dramatically adverse.
What would be the impact on the summer bill? And even though overall you're only impacted by 5%, but it's like mid-July, it would be up 40% or I don't know what, but that's what they would call it. Like,
I'm just speculating, but my feeling is it will go.
that what?
It will go up a little bit this summer. They didn't change the usage pattern. The way that we design the roads, it shifted a little bit this summer. Because that's when the costs are really good. That's what's driving a lot of the passing costs of transmission.
So make these changes during the winter, not during the summer, so that when their bills change, it doesn't happen right after this rate change.
That's a good point.
And it's an important. I'll go check out.
I have a question, but I think it's more for Casey. So how will this affect how often we would have to start our gas turbines up during peak periods? Is that more dependent on the surrounding grid and what's going on around us and how much it needs? Or will this change things? If things go down by 10%, will we avoid having to crank the gas turbines up?
I would say that it shouldn't have any impact on the value of energy in the grid. Value of energy that we monitor is a grid large factor for the entire state. So changes we make here won't necessarily impact the overall grid on that big of a scale to change LL&P prices.
Okay, so we operate them under 2 circumstances. One's economic dispatch, goods all market-driven, others grid support, if MISO calls for it. So, to his point, on a big scale, we're not going to stabilize the grid by doing it. But now, if everybody would do it, and we saw theoretically, you saw a 10% reduction in your peak, it would drastically change the likelihood that MISO needed to call on it for grid support. But that's definitely reliant on an overall 10% reduction in usage.
It's good that you have that generator because right now our whole industry is in transition. And the transition is that as we move more and more to renewables, and we're shutting down more and more coal plants, we're not fully there yet on the renewables side. And so, but nobody's investing in dispatchable generators. They're very little investing. And so these Texas situations most likely are going to occur. So, but you have some protection there because that caps your costs. Even though it's expensive to run the generator, it in a sense serves as an upper boundary on what you can pay. So I probably shouldn't share my 2 cents on generator. You want to go forward? This is my last slide. And you know, one of the things that we always get concerned with is you want to make sure you have all the systems in place before you roll it out in any kind of large scale. Because it could be a nightmare not testing. So what a lot of utilities will do is they will pilot initially for employees and say, okay, employees, who wants to try this with me?
I was gonna say, I'll do it. I'll try that.
So, you know, just to look at a couple, maybe a month, maybe two, and then to move on to a little bit more extensive, maybe 20 or 30 users. Now, Traverse City, what they did is they said, okay, we're going to go to this 20 or 30 users.
Right off the bat. They did it right off the bat.
Yeah, they felt that they could hand bill if they really had to.
Okay.
You know, 20 or 30. But it went so smoothly. Their plan was to do this for 6 months. It went so smoothly after 2-3 months. They opened it up because of, you know, they had confidence in their system. But it's more a matter of testing because your systems haven't been tested properly, and the system hasn't been asked to do it. So then after this is, which could be 2-3 months, could be a year, before we're comfortable. But to go to publishing. Now, when it comes to publishing then the question becomes from the board standpoint. And I would probably initially go to an opt-in initially. And the reason is just to test the waters, the customers will see it. You probably only get 10% of residential customers choosing. It isn't because they don't want to, they just don't understand what it is. Let's be realistic. And so, like, let's take Sacramento, Smart. They offer this opt-in rate for like 4 years. In 2019, they said, okay, we're done with it. Everybody's going to be put on opt-out. They still had the regular rate terms available, but everybody's big default rate was 98% of the resident customers stayed in the town. The ones that are on it, they usually come from. They have very few backlash questions. And that's a utility with 750,000 customers. I think they're the third largest municipal in the country. So, you know, but these are addressed, and that can be addressed later on. The big question for the board is, do we want to start on this process? Start down the road. Yeah. With these rate tariffs that we have. In other words, we want to go with these 20 or 30 users with the phase, the 2-step phase in or the 3-step phase in. Doesn't mean we couldn't do it quicker once we started. But at least start phase, if we go back to the rate limit, we're down back on the contract side. And go backwards. Oh.
We tried it, but it wasn't so easy. It was on like a slide.
Just as a term, but it's not what you should get rid of the panels.
It's an approach.
We are,
Is
we're
that if
working.
you decide to go opt-out?
Oh, go ahead.
Either way, you can either opt in or opt out.
Okay.
But it doesn't. Oh,
But yes,
I tried that.
Gotta go all the way across the screen, it makes things
difficult.
Are we there yet or not?
There we go.
Okay, sorry, thank
So
you.
the big question is, if we go down this path, it's important to think about, at least to start off, we want to do the 3-period phase and then 2. And now, I don't know if it really makes that big a difference, because whether we start here and then jump over to this is probably going to be, and you can always make that decision.
Okay, that was maybe one of my questions.
Yeah. But, you know, I think the big thing is, do we want to at least start with this, with these test customers? So let's start with this small differential.
What's the worst case scenario? What is the horrifying thing about this?
Your systems can't do it. That would be the most.
Okay, so it's a billing situation. So would we upgrade our system for
I would-
billing, or?
No,
I would think that.
yeah, it sounds like DAFA can do it, we've reached out to them, we've asked questions, they've asked questions, we've kind of gone back and forth, trying to they've asked the right questions, we've asked questions back. They're still in the process of helping us, but we're also in the process of changing to that new portal. So, some of the people that are working on the time use and the new portal are on the same teams. So I haven't received a final answer back on some of the questions, but they tell us, yes, they've done time use for other customers.
Before we started this process, we reached out to make
Yeah.
sure, theoretically at least, the capability was there, that we're not
Yeah.
the first of DAFRA, our billing companies, their customers to go off into this. You know, we want to make sure we weren't out there leading the charge, and we're not.
Right,
So,
right,
so
right.
we've been assured,
At the wheel.
yeah, the devil's always in the details, so, you know, once we have the specific rates, we can really drill down into it, but, yeah, we've been engaging with them, and also the AMI vendor to make sure
But
we
we
can.
reached out to Traverse City, where it seemed to go smoothly.
We
And
did
asked
not.
them.
We have not, we're just starting, like, looking into it, talking to DAFA, we're just really at the starting point. Do you want us to go further and do some of these things?
I get that.
So exactly, reaching out to anyone, no. If you say, no, you don't want to do this, that would not make
I'm excited about it personally, but I'm not speaking for the board, just Katrina. But, I do know that only having one, model city for you to reach out to see how smoothly theirs went, to ease into it, is not that's not good thinking in my marketing eyes. If you could give me like 3, that would be great.
I don't think you'll find.
Somebody has to start someplace.
I know, but just Traverse City, because
Well,
we're gonna get our.
Consumers does it right now.
Oh, yeah, around the country, there's, in 2018, 13% of utilities offered residential tenants. Usually, it's at the end of 20.
So are we the smallest city
Oh, in,
in Michigan to look at doing this? Because, I'm just throwing out hometown values here. And I know that some people are going to ask, well, then, those guys that walk from house to house, and they've got a piece of paper, and they can sell us rates, and I turned them away because we have low light power. What's the difference between that weird person that was knocking on my door? You guys have had it, haven't you?
For gas?
Yeah,
Yeah,
For
gas,
gas, but
gas.
they
But not
can't sell you
electricity.
electricity.
Okay,
not municipal.
I just turned them away, I didn't even realize that it was for gas guys.
One of the things to think about though too.
I don't want it. Sorry. Go ahead.
Because this is a pilot program, so all we're doing right now is just saying we're going to do some pilot. Just to work out the details. And then the board would be asked, hey, what do we want to do? So you had more information once we get through the pilot. I think that's the big thing is to start the pilot.
Also, we were doing like a phase in, and doing an opt-in, customers choose an opt-in to the third phase rate. So if they don't want to wait till 3 years later to.
That was one of the things that we wanted to do is, because electric vehicles, we want them to be able to take advantage of this. And they don't really get a lot of good value if they get up here. So one of the things we're thinking about is offering 2 types of residential, a phase in and a full.
Next, I was thinking if you wanted to like get get a better air conditioner or something like that, you wouldn't get much benefit for 3 years.
Right, from what I'm understanding from Beauchamp, that's part of what, can they do that, have all these different rates to offer? And then, so, I think they're trying to figure that out, how many, you know, we have two rate, you know, a winter on-peak, off-peak, and do we have a free rate? Free, so they were asking different questions like that, so.
You may want to have them talk to us.
Okay.
Yeah, because that's not how I'm envisioning it. It would be, this would be the rate, it'd be one rate. You'd have a residential one rate, you understand, a residential two rate, which might be this one. And then you have a residential three rate, which would be the full rate. And then the customer would choose the rate.
Okay,
So then you just code it.
yeah.
So you can always have it.
So, so how long is the pilot you're suggesting? Because in my, so here's back in my mind is, so if you're doing, example, I guess if I was one of them, which I probably would not, I guess I would be the bad customer, because I probably would not, doubtful if I would be changing the way I use energy to begin with. So,
You'd be surprised.
well, maybe I would be,
I
but
thought the same thing when my rate changed at home to consumers. You think about it, oh, I don't necessarily have to wash this right now. If I wait 30 minutes, I'm in the next rate. I'll set my, like he's saying, a new washer.
how much,
You
how
can
much
set-
washer, how much wash?
I'm just using an example.
Look, all you have to do is put the reds in with the whites, and the male doesn't have to do
I'm
that
just
anymore.
saying, your
Or
train of thought,
Put your,
each person is different. That is just an example.
or put them in the dryer and let them dry, but don't fold them. You don't have to do it anymore. They go, thank you very much for helping,
There
but.
is a magnet, we were told at one of the training, that it goes right on your dryer, and
Yep.
it says, what time is it? Is it between this time and this time? Do not use me. It says right on the magnet. You stick right
I
on
love that.
on the dryer, because if you're in time of use rates, you don't want anyone to use the dryer, so it's a really cool magnet.
So what I'm asking, so what good is the pilot program for 30 to 60 people if you're only doing it for a month or 2 months or even 6 months? Because I feel like to get the whole feel, I need to go through the summer peak and I need to go through the winter peak, or off peak or whatever, to get that, to show me that there's a reason to, because the winter, where the chart, we're wanting it more level, so I'm getting charged more in the off peak and I'm getting less, and we're trying to, so I guess that's my question, without having.
The study has a 1, 2, and 3. It's not year 1, year 2, year 3.
I understand
You
that,
jump,
but
you know, do number 1 you could for 4 years, and then okay, someone's seen it for 4 years of that, and then you can jump to the next one. So it's your decision.
right, but I'm meaning the whole, why do a pilot program with 2 or 3 employees, and why do a pilot program with
Oh, I know the
if
answer.
they're
I know the
only, if
answer.
we're not doing it,
It's for
Yeah.
if we're
billing.
not doing that
It's for
pilot for a
billing.
full year, just see the effect of
Billing.
the different seasons,
I think
the
the
different
pilot,
rates.
the pilot's not to see the effect, it's more to iron out the process.
Yeah.
It's the
And then-
process, and
And
it's
it's gonna
also,
take several years to see the effect anyway.
the other thing is,
That's what
another big motivation for us is this is gonna be something very new for our CSRs. So, you know, our thought is if you start with a very small group, you test the process. And worst case scenario, we're sitting there with spreadsheets and we're manually calculating. Then next you're testing the scalability, what happens when we have more. And then when you go to an opt-in, you typically get the most friendly customers. So you kind of work through from a scale, you work really small and grow, and you attract more volunteers, it helps with the billing software. And really, one of the big things is the CSRs getting more familiar with the rate, getting familiar with the conversations, being as knowledgeable as possible before you take the next step of going to an opt-out rate or a wider adoption. You know, our staff is more prepared because it really becomes about educating our customers, and the more knowledgeable our staff is, the better we can provide that assistance to our customers, so they don't see these huge negative impacts, or at least they consciously make choices to pay the higher price. We want to make sure they see the price signals and they understand the price signals, and that starts with staff education and staff familiarity.
And board education.
And
If I'm a board member and I opt for that, of course I would send my accountant over to talk to you. David. But I love that fact that I would put myself out there as a board member saying, I'm opting in and I want to be I want to do it right away, so that if there's any problem with billing, we can iron these things out or what have you, or we can figure it out together. So that when we're further down the road and I have a neighbor that says, can you believe what they're doing, and I can tell them I've been in the program and you need to talk to David because he's pretty happy about 806 Lafayette not costing him his arm or a leg like he always tells me it does. So.
and we would like feedback as a customer. You know,
definitely.
And, you know, your perspective and that friendly adoption really helps build knowledge.
I think it'd be important to also get experience on how to tell people how they can do something, right? So if you're going to change the rate, how can they take advantage of it? Because even like the dishwasher thing is one I hadn't even thought of.
I think what you were talking about though, with those little magnets, I think we should order 1,000 of those at least. So
yeah, there's some lot of good ideas in those trainings that we took that I think we'll implement, like, you know, a lot of stuff that Mark has recommended, the phases, there's magnets, and there's people now calling, asking for these rates.
Wow. And Expo is coming up too. I wouldn't say coming up, but it's only in a few months that could be rolled out or talked about at Expo too.
I guess also to think about if there's ways to show the customer what their savings would be, like, you know, for an example, like the dishwasher thing, if you ran your dishwasher every night at 3 in the morning versus 3 in the afternoon, over the course of the year, what does that save you? Just for the dishwasher. And I think the more that they see that kind of effect, they'll say, oh, let's start doing this now, and you've got to have it, because otherwise they wouldn't. Because right now in the bill, it's hard, you can't tell what the difference is, you know, because the weather grabs your bill more than anything, but it'd be nice to know what impact the dishwasher has on the bill, or what impact the furnace and AC or.
And the big thing to start there is I think we would target electric vehicle drivers, because when Mark talks about enabling technology, they're already enabled.
Right.
You can set your Tesla to charge at midnight, but right now there's no incentive for it. And we're not positive, but we had an outage recently at a house that we think they've got an EV or potentially may, and Casey looked at data and we saw dips in their voltage at 6, 7, it's about 6 o'clock at night.
6 p.m. So they come home and plug in.
We're definitely speculating. It's all circumstantial evidence that points to it, but when you see that dip in voltage at 6, 7 o'clock at night, and we think they have an EV that's pulling 10 kW, 12 kW, there's a good chance that they're just coming home, plugging it in. They do not.
Isn't there a timer on those things?
Oh, they can say it's super easy to set.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's no reason for them to do it. So, but yeah, if we found those customers, that's probably the single biggest saver or opportunity for savings. So we could do those simple calculations based on 10 kW or whatever it is for hours. Those things take 4 hours to charge typically. So you've got a big load that's sustained over a long period of time. It really would be impactful to see the difference between charging it on peak, off peak, and super off peak. And that's one of the reasons that we wanted to go with the super off peak is really to entice the EV drivers, and as more and more are adopted, it felt more inviting of a rate because it's about controlling costs instead of going the other route where you're talking about super critical peak on peak, and so that was some of our motivations, was trying to cater towards them and prepare ourselves for continued adoption and EVs.
You probably want to at least have one EV customer or more as part of the pilot.
It's in the same system that we'd be looking out of as what you're.
Wasn't it pretty cheap to charge a car anyways, like
Especially does not use DAF
or $8?
No, so DAF has other customers that do it, just might not appreciate.
What, out in Michigan?
Right, not in Michigan.
I was gonna say, if you're talking about EV, I thought.
Well, they have other customers in Michigan,
Okay.
just not on
peak hours.
And I'm sure they have.
Because I really want
Yeah.
her to sit down with somebody that's using
Yeah,
them,
that's what I'm saying.
and using that scenario, in the system that we're gonna use, so that you can sit down.
300 people go on this.
But I personally, when I'm facing the system, I like to sit down with somebody that's using it all the time, have a coffee, sit next to them. I got mine on, and we can roll with them, and I can ask if we're going, what's going on with this. And then I can ask that person candid question, what do you think about this system? What do you find that if that there's lag time at night, like towards 3:30 in the afternoon, or that type of
Yeah, so
conversation that.
I don't know if we would know anyone that has DAF run, has Yukon, and, our exact rates, so, I mean, it'd be a little bit different, but I
We
guess
don't
we
have to
can
have our
always.
exact rates, but the same system that you guys work on.
Yeah, they have a lot of, usually DAF run has a lot of training, and, you can work with them, they could probably get us with someone that uses time and use.
So what are you looking for, Charlie?
I mean, today I think we're just, Mark's presented kind of the rates. The question now becomes, is the board comfortable with, what's the route that the board wants to go? Is the board comfortable with the on-peak, off-peak hours, comfortable with the bill impacts? Do you lean more towards a three phase-in period if we're going to do it, or or two? I mean, from our standpoint, I think it makes sense right now to look all the way to the full rate and put, well, I guess I won't say that. It makes sense to do a two phase-in period. If you look at the bill impacts between a 2 and a 3 phase-in period, you don't really change much going from that. And we would recommend a slow adoption. We would recommend going with a couple, 2, 3, a couple of us at the table, probably doing a pilot. But more than anything, feedback on the actual rate. Where's the board's comfort level in proceeding with this? Or are there any missing pieces that you'd like us to consider, look for more information?
So when you're doing the pilot with 2 or 3 or whatever, and then 30 to 60 or whatever, would your intentions to give them the new bill, time of use, and the old bill so that they can compare what the impact is?
Yeah, do we have the data to take someone's prior bill?
Yes, that's what Mark and Mike did with all the scatter plots, is that's our actual, we sent Megan and
Oh,
them
gotcha.
looked at,
Yeah,
they
it's
pulled
through-
individual
through
customers and
information
moved them.
plot.
Yeah.
At the time of use.
So I,
That's an interesting thought, is for, especially folks in the pilot, do they get, you give them like their new bill, but then kind of show, here's your old bill would have been.
Kilowatt hours used, this was it, and then kilowatt hours used under this rate, and then you can compare the difference. I don't think you need to see a whole complete
There's
bill.
a reason for people to opt in to kind of go,
Yeah.
I'd save money from that.
yes, and that's what we,
Or that you did save money, right? I mean, because worst case, people are gonna pay the same as they would have paid before, right?
but some people, yeah, some people could have,
I guess if some people, I guess they would, some would just, if they did a whole lot more electricity on them, right? They could,
And I would also caution against doing it on a monthly basis,
Yeah.
because it
There's a
wouldn't
lot of
necessarily be indicative of costs over a time period. And Mark and Mike's analysis looked at, you know, over a year, the revenue for a year. So if we looked at just a month, yeah, this time of year, you know, if you look at the winter rates right now, you know, it's almost impossible for a customer's, it may be impossible for a customer's bill to go up right now when you're,
possible,
yeah, so, you know, it
And
would,
it's guaranteed to go up in the summer.
So backing up, so my question would be, with the pilot program, are you looking just to make sure that our software can do it? Or are you looking to show, is the intention of the pilot program just to make sure that the software is capable? Or is it the possibility of showing, here's the difference of what, if you were on, here's your new bill and here's your old bill, you might see a difference or you may not see a difference at the current, unless you went for a full cycle, which is a year. I mean, those are the,
I think
that's what I was saying. It sounds cool to think you could compare bills, but the more you think about it, I don't think it really tells you anything, because all winter it's going to be lower and all summer it's going to be higher than your past bill, you know, or past bill would have been. But so you would really have to go a whole year to see an impact. But I think what we know
I'm
is
just
that
trying to get an understanding.
I mean, we know there will be an impact that's going to be positive overall. And so I think the real thing is just testing out the system. It's not just the software, but it's also just how does the staff handle it? How do customers react to it?
And I think,
Right.
you know, if you look at the timeline from now till some future in hypothetical endpoint, you know, the pilot, 2 to 3 people is truly about making sure the software can do it. 20 to 30 is the next level of testing of the software, also starting to get some interaction, learning how, you know, learning what the customer's experiencing. And then the next step, we would recommend an opt-in rate, and that's, you know, that's when you really start to get a broader sense of the impact, who's opting in, who has to engage with us. That's where it really, I think, would help a lot of, you know, we'd learn quite a bit. And that's really in preparation for an opt-out implementation where it becomes the default rate. So there's quite a few steps between now and the eventual opt-out, which I don't, Mark, I'll let you share your thoughts on, you know, what the industry, you think the industry is going to do. But you know, in general, I think rates is one place that the IOUs are actually ahead of the municipals. You know, we stand by what we do as a municipal utility. We're very proud of what we do. But when you do stack up rate offerings at IOUs versus municipals, typically you have more rate options and more rate flexibility at an IOU. And I'll say that, but I also kind of look at Mark to you clarify he has far more experience at a national scale than.
You're pretty much correct, especially in terms of residential and the time use. I mean, when we looked at it, now we talk about 2019 data, because I had more 2020 data. We had 72% of residential customers in the U.S. have ALM data, but pretty much every investor on utility has it. So that 29% that doesn't have it is a lot of these municipals, a lot of smaller municipals. And I'm very much afraid of them, because this is the future. This is the way that we control it. You can't offer terms. This is what customers want. They have now the ability to control their bills. I mean, we can promote electric vehicles, promote, you know, promote more economic use of our resources by having this. And it's without this, I really worry about the viability of these small municipal systems that don't have the. You know, we still have a lot of, say it's not Michigan, but a lot of general managers around the country that we're not, we've been doing this for 100 years like this, and we're at this point. You know?
And that's also why a lot of Michigan municipals haven't gone to time of use, is the need to deploy an AMI system. They don't have infrastructure in place that's even capable of it. So I think they would I think they would head down that, but the first hurdle is to get them to implement these advanced metering capabilities that provide that data. I mean, there are unfortunately some municipals throughout the country that aren't 10 years behind. There are some that are 20, 30 years behind. I heard a municipal that doesn't keep an AR register. They don't know what their customers are being billed. So how, so they have some hurdles. So I'd like to say we're ahead of the time, but I think we're on pace with the time. If you look at the blended overall average, I think we're ahead for a lot of municipals, but when you look at the bigger scale, we're kind of keeping pace.
Why would we, it's on a phase in, why even have like 2 or 3 phase charging? I mean, if people want it, why don't we just say, if it was opt out, sorry, not phase in, if it was since it's opt in, and if I opt in, I want to be able to use 3 right away. I don't want to screw around with any of those. If I'm in, if I wanted to not feel it on my bill, I would still go the old way.
And I don't know if that's. I think the phases become more applicable, and we talked about this. Your EV right now. The biggest attraction is going to be your electric vehicle drivers that can have that one very small life change that's really program your car to charge later, and they can realize an impact and a savings. They're going to want to go to 3, and we need to be prepared to offer them that full time of use rate.
It's normal rate to pay.
It's when we do and move to an opt-out program that you get more aware. So the structure's there, and it can be adjusted over time to reflect any rate increases or rate changes over time. But I think a lot of my recommendation would be to look at the different phasing period more closely when we're going to that opt-out rate. But to have that structure in place is important as well.
One of the things to think about too, is $3, it's only $600. All the other orders are the same. Only $600. So we're looking at.
But with having the smaller bill impacts, that's why originally we started and we'll do a 3-phase. Then we looked at the bill impacts and thought, wow, I thought the same thing, that we'd see 20–30% swings both ways.
It's like 10% swing.
Yeah, that's fairly nominal.
If I got surprised by a 10% swing in my bill, I would.
Your bill will fluctuate more than 10% based on weather.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, what's the big summer bill gonna change like? So that's the thing that surprised people, that you never had to pay more than this before. Right now, all of a sudden, this is that much more than that. And as long as they're prepared for that and explain that you're going to be saving the rest of the year, I think they'll pay. But those are probably the ones that they then type of thing where they don't like the idea of seeing a $50 bill become an $80 bill later. Once in a while,
Do we have this set up to run the numbers for somebody? If somebody wanted to see it, take their past bill, run it through a spreadsheet or something, and be able to show them this is how things would work if we.
We don't have that right now, but the goal would be to have that in place. Yeah, I mean, we have all the data. It's just a matter of sitting down and manipulating the data and creating some sort of batch process that would put all that data where it needs to be. We're looking at a lot of different things. But yes, we don't now, but the goal would be to have it, especially before we went to a broader offering. But yeah, it would be important to have that ready knowledge of, if you went to this is this is what it would save you, or this is what it would cost you, because.
Yeah.
No,
I don't
they
know.
didn't realize,
Yeah,
yeah.
the other thing to consider is we want to be aware of bill impacts, but we can't get scared of doing this because some customers will receive a negative impact. You know, some bills will go up, but you know, if you look at the big things that drive your summer costs, your capacity and your transmission, they're two of the most unstable charges. Most volatile, we're seeing year-over-year increases in transmission rates. They're very difficult to project what your transmission expenses are going to be because it's all about how coincident you are to the overall grid. And from a capacity standpoint, it's all over the place. Last year it was a cost of new entry. This year it's way down. You know, with all the coal plants getting shut down and all the deals, and the capacity market's going to get tighter and tighter, which is going to create more and more volatility. So even if it has a negative impact on some individual customers, the overall benefit to the residential class, it will provide more rate stability. So even those customers that see somewhat of an increase in the long run, they'll be the beneficiaries of more rate stability, and we won't be chasing rates at that point. So, you know, yes, we want to be cognizant of rate impacts, and we don't want to, you know, put somebody in a bad spot, but we need to find ways to control that, not necessarily eliminate that.
No, no,
Yeah.
I'm saying that in the same Morrison, I'm aware.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, being surprised by that is going to cause the most combination.
Yes, absolutely.
So looking at these, so if I'm a customer, or I'll just use me, I'm a customer and I don't want to change my ways, I'm going to pay more, my bill overall is going to be more, correct?
It depends.
How's it depend? Because
If
I'm
you're
looking,
bidding
I mean,
your-
I'm looking at the rate, the winter
Yeah.
off-peak rate's the same, the winter super,
So it wouldn't change if your behavior was exactly the same. Right?
Well, it could. So the
Yeah,
question
and the
becomes,
weather's exactly the same.
yeah, do you fall above the line or do you fall below the line? Are you one of those customers that's subsidizing other customers, or are you one of those customers being subsidized? You know, so everybody, you know, if you know, with the analysis that they did, that looked at past usage. So it is, you know, theoretically, you could project that forward. That was a normal usage. Under these rates, half the customers' bills would go up, half the customers' bills would go down, but it would be revenue neutral to the entire class. It's probably not half, but you know, the revenue is the same, but that some customers will be, some customers are above that line, some customers are below that line, and that's assuming no price. That assumes no change in behavior. So it would depend on where you fell on that
So
line.
could we show a customer that chart that you have the blue and orange line? But could we like, I think those was colored, but.
Yeah.
Like, so is that something that we could generate for a customer if they wanted it, or just?
That's really
say-
system average.
Right, but I mean, do we have like the data of the customer that says over the past year, here's what your use was.
If you
And
would have been on it.
Here's what our rate is based on, here's the windows for our peaks, here's where your peak falls on average, and you might see that, hey, my peak tends to be right in the middle of that peak, and so I'm gonna probably be impacted more, but if my peak happens to be more in the early time, well, then I'm gonna be more of a saver.
Yeah, and it really is about how much space and area is under the line, not necessarily how high. Yeah, because you could go peak real high and crash, and you'd be fine because there's not much area underneath that peak. But if your curve followed that right there, that orange line, your bill's going to go up. If you work third shift and you're asleep.
Followed it perfectly.
Oh, yes, that is true. Yes, yeah, that is true.
But we would really plot like the rates, right? So you have a rate that's low, and the rate goes up, and then goes up again, and right, so there would be this rate squared with the curve. And then plot your usage on top of that, and you can see, hey, most of my usage falls within that curve, or maybe I better change my ways, or hey, most of my usage is already outside that curve.
Yeah, and that would be an enhancement, kind of be the next step of just a simple calculation of if you didn't change it, if you were on this rate for the past year, you would have saved this much or spent this much more. but you have to go into graphing usage based on where it actually falls would be kind of the next step.
I think for our customers, they could actually benefit from this from day one without having to spend money on energy efficiencies. Just by shifting their air conditioning and using their house as like a thermal battery, you cool it down to about 65 degrees just before the peak rates go into effect. And, you know, if a home, most homes that are 25 years old or so, I mean, they'll probably hold the temperature to, you know, probably end up at about 75 degrees at 7 o'clock in the evening when the rate changes. So then they can kick it back on and keep it even lower or even at that.
Well, that's-
Everybody does that, like you're saying, but we gotta move our feet a little bit.
Right, well, that's, then educate me, the ratepayer, on those smart thermostats. How do I make that happen in my home? Other than the little Mercury one you turn?
David's got that on his phone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What you were saying, what we do in our house is we open the windows at night in the summer, so if we wake up and it's 65 in the house, and once the temperature's equal, we close the windows and then put it around the air until much later than we would have to. So there's, I mean, there's lots of things like that that I guess
When I'm up at the camp, I don't need the air.
customers can learn from too.
Yeah, like my wife does.
Learn that, my grand.
Okay, so what, we need to move forward. So,
But, I mean, I guess, so, I think the next step will be to draft some actual rates, to be adopted. I think it'd be good to have board-adopted rates on record before we get to, you know, just be in compliance with city charter. You know, rates before they're offered are supposed to be published with the, with Sue for 30 days, so the next steps would be to work with Mark and make sure that what we draft for the board to be adopted is reflective of the analysis, make sure nothing gets lost in translation, bring that to the board for adoption, and that would be the official rate action. But you know, from my standpoint, I've not heard anything, any major red flags that we've got to stop, regroup, think of something different, add something, take something away, you know, because you know, there are, we went through different iterations, and we originally didn't have super, you know, there's a lot of moving pieces that you can move. You know, we kind of started with what Mark and UFS felt was kind of the optimal structure, the kind of the pure rate structure, and then we kind of adjusted for goals or, you know, what's easy to communicate or whatever the case may be. There's other factors, real world factors that we consider.
so, how is that going to work with our charter? I mean, with our, so we're not, when we come back, and you're gonna have these, we're not adopting, we're adopting those just as a pilot?
As a pilot, yeah, we would
I
just
mean,
put.
we're not adopting them as all of our customers are.
No, it would be a closed pilot, and then we could, you know, and Mark probably talked about others, but, you know, I've heard a lot of stories of you do a closed pilot, then you do an open pilot that's capped, and then you do an uncapped open pilot, but the rates still have to, you know, they still have to be there, even though they wouldn't necessarily be available to everybody. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
And so any rate we offer has to be approved, essentially.
I think it's prudent, especially if the people at this table are gonna be the ones opting into it, you know, to not have formally adopted rates that apply to Tina, me. To me, I think it would be a wise move to formally adopt them at an open meeting and go through the process, whether or not it's 100% required. Couldn't necessarily speak to that, but I think it's just good practice personally.
Go ahead.
These rates are based on margin costs, which is based on market costs. How often is that adjusted? Like how often do we, you know, because is that based on like historical market cost? I mean, how do you get to that point, and how do we manage that going forward?
Well, periodically, it's updated, just like anything, we want to move on ahead. Because the market prices are there. Of course, the market prices, not even your college supplies cost a lot of market prices, they do have all the customers. They'll pick up the differential. But this is still gonna save you money, because customers are actually reducing it during the
Yeah.
But, so overall.
Would you use like a running average quarterly or something? I mean, how do you?
Oh, I wouldn't adjust this rate, other than pretty normal cost of service. Your cost of service will, say it's gonna be more expensive. You know, right now, we do what's called an embedded cost of service study. But we're gonna have to do both embedded and recurring. So it's a little bit more. So, just an not.
And in the process, we're currently looking at our power cost adjuster. We're going to continue to dive into the power cost adjuster, and that helps us follow market trends.
So there's still something there.
Yeah.
Like,
There's still
if
very.
the rate that we're adjusting to leaves us a little short or a little above the market, we still have a way to recapture those.
And all rates are based on some set of assumptions.
Yeah.
So you have to test those assumptions here and there, and you have to have mechanisms to balance fluctuations in the assumptions, and that's what the power cost adjuster kind of can follow market trends, and we want to make sure that we're optimizing our PCA rate. You know, and that's something that it's another thing that's on our radar. Megan, Julie, and I have been talking about it, especially as you look at projected forward curves of power for the foreseeable future. There's more and more volatility. The more and more volatility you have, the more you need to have those mechanisms in place.
And this is all, what we're talking about is all separate from the cost of service.
That's correct.
So you still have that $24.
The cost of service doesn't change. The cost of service is the same for all residential customers. It's a class determined amount. So yes, that $24 piece will stay in place.
I would encourage exploring this for commercial and industrial.
Yes, that will be. We're going to spend a lot of time with Mark and his team next year, I think.
Well, we have the base done, the tonnage rates set marginal basis, so then just a matter of time. And the hard part with that is not development, right, it's testing.
Yeah.
Rate development's the easy part, it's the testing, say if we implement this, how's it, again, we're talking about no surprises. And that's what I'm testing. We got egg on our face.
Okay.
Well, plus, like the industrial, they could even have a different usage pattern, right? I mean, the three-shift operation, that might just be fairly steady.
But that might affect our revenue. I mean,
It's gonna push our
in a
spike up.
proportion that would be more significant than with a residential customer. So.
Yeah. But maybe more due just to their like demand versus their use, right? They're doing the same energy consistent throughout the day. It's a lot of energy, but which is pushing up our spike. But it's different than just if they were a evening operation or afternoon operation. It's always adding to our spike even more.
Okay, any other questions for Mark? So I think you've got a plan, and I think consensus is the board would like to move forward. So.
Sounds great. We'll start ironing out the details, and we will come back to the board in either December or January with rate for consideration.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah,
Thank you.
really
Thank you, Mark,
appreciate
for
it.
being, yeah, it's good to see you.
Come on, slide this.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. I'll follow up with you here next week or something, I'm sure. So, appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Yep.
Bye-bye, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, next thing is strategic plan.
All right.
I've asked, asked Charlie to get with everybody and thought it would be a good time to, with having, good time to review it, with having Craig new on board to get his input on the strategic plan and everything, and so that's what we're doing.
Great, great. Well, yeah, as Perry mentioned, we all got together, myself, Julie, Megan, Casey, Brian, we all got together. We regularly talk about strategic plan items, but thought it would, like Perry said, thought it'd be good to do a review. One of the things that, so in February we did a review, and we typically will continue to do a more substantial update and review in February, kind of as a pre-budgeting tool as we look right before we start to develop the budget. We really start to drill in on what we want to take on the next year, and that kind of is a launching point for a larger review and update of it, but we did want to provide a review. As a reminder, I will remind everybody that in the manager's report, all the items that have an asterisk to start and finish, the item is connected to the strategic plan action item list. So we try to give regular updates as ongoing projects are being addressed, but there are some we want to highlight, and I've asked everybody to kind of highlight strategically some of the different items, but we'll start, sorry Julie, we'll start with the strategic plan document itself. One of the things I wanted to review was just some of the initial changes we made in February. We didn't make many, but we did emphasize the premier utility in the vision, and then we also added a focus on safety under the strategies. We added a safety-centric culture. So with that, this document is really board-driven more than anything. So I thought I'd just review kind of big picture, the changes that we made. We do look at this on an annual basis. I know Craig, you looked at it. We talked about it when you first came on the board. But with that, I'll turn it over to the board. Any discussion that you all would like to have, or anything you'd like to bring attention to. I want to give you all that opportunity in the actual strategic plan document.
I'm pretty good with what we've accomplished. I mean, everything that's there. Again, I'd open it up to Craig and new board member and stuff to, if they have any input into it. It's more, so.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No.
When I was waiting for his turn
No.
page, I'm thinking, wait a minute, there was a word that I came across, I went, I don't like that word.
Well,
I know, that's why it's a disabler.
yeah, it's one of the market forces against us.
Negative.
It's an enabler and a disabler.
That's
Yeah.
why, I was like, I don't know.
I kind of like that one actually,
Okay.
just because
Why?
it is both. Well, it's an enabler because it's really hard for competition to come in, but it's also hard for us to compete with New York.
And it's also an environmental influence. It's something that we don't control. So,
Right.
I would say it's definitely an enabler. It's also a disabler. It depends on how we interact with that environmental influence. I ask the question a lot: is if we weren't a monopoly, would we do it this way? If our customers had a choice, would they choose to do business with us? That kind of taking that, making sure we don't use monopoly as a crutch or a source of complacency. So I would say that here it's an an acknowledgement more than a placing a value on it, because I do think it's important to be aware that it could lead to complacency. It could, if we acknowledge it, I think it can also enhance the way we do things. So it definitely is an influence on us, though.
To me, it's the word behind the word, is what you're trying to get.
Yeah, well, that's what I was
Yes.
thinking for the second bullet, local control. Part of just wondering, should we add a qualifier to that, like, why is local control important, mailing in particular? So I guess I don't see it this late when you can put that local control.
So I would say the disabling would be if there's nobody to stop an irresponsible action. If, again, not to say we are,
Right.
you know, but it's an acknowledgement that local control, the fact that the 5 of you are the decision makers for all of our customers. If you act, you know, if you act responsibly, it's an enabler. If you act irresponsibly, it's a disabler. You know, there's not a supposed neutral third party that's like the MPSC, which I wouldn't call it a neutral third party, but theoretically, they're that regulatory oversight. They're there to protect against bad decisions, theoretically, where that's really, that all falls on the board here. So that's where I would see it as an enabler or a disabler.
Okay.
Good to roll? All right. So we'll start talking a little meat and potatoes here. So with the actual action items, wanted to touch base, like I said, just kind of high level, what are the strategic value? What's the strategic value of some of these projects? What are the hurdles we've ran into? What progress have we made? We won't focus too much on the progress side of things, because a lot of progress is supplied monthly through the manager's report, but please ask questions if we don't hit on specific progress that you'd like or something. Please ask questions and we'll provide that. But you know, we started going through this and realized that if we provided much detail on too many of these, we might not leave tonight. You know, there's a lot of stuff involved in this, and we could talk for hours on any of these projects. But wanted to start, Julie, if you would go forward a few slides to the map.
Oh, yeah. This map?
Yep. I'm going to turn it over to Ryan and Casey. The next slide is going to be the risk matrix too. But turn it over to Ryan and Casey to just kind of talk through voltage conversion. This past year we definitely took a very close look at voltage conversion plan. It was set out years ago. A lot of things have changed, the way we look at things, just what we've learned from the projects that we've done, the pace of progress. We kind of revamped it this year and started looking at things a little bit different. Want to communicate it with the board a little different. Try to a lot of what I heard was it started project 110 doesn't mean anything. So we're going to kind of boil it down to what's happening out there. So with that, Ryan, Casey, I'll let you guys dive in a little bit just to kind of what we're doing, where we're at, what's next, and how we're kind of evaluating these projects.
Every day. There's all kinds of things that constantly get done with voltage conversions. Every time we do any kind of a move, we think about how can we service customers with the voltage that we are planning to have everywhere. If it's possible, that's what we always do. It's just always our thoughts. And the big shape, say that's a purple area along Main Street, just south of the dock addition, where we're doing all that underground conversion. We have a Jimmy John's and Culver's restaurant going in a way to where we're gonna get our 7,200 volt system into those two restaurants and make sure that they're converted to that real soon. Right now, they're operating off the other voltage that it's probably early summer, we'll have it converted over, so that thought's holding on our mind. On doing things like that.
What is zone one, do you think of the significance of the zone?
So you want to go to the next slide? Kind of sets up, I'll let you kind of touch on this, Casey, on the zones.
Yeah, so, what we did is we broke down the, all of the regions with, 4160 voltage into zones. Electrically, they're a zone, so they have kind of isolated, 4160 volt systems in those zones.
So
And
they're a zone within a circuit?
yes,
Okay.
and they're not connected, and they can't be connected to any other zone. So they're just little island zones of low voltage, essentially,
Okay.
lower voltage. So what we wanted to do is kind of take a step back, look at each zone, and say, what are all the factors that kind of make a zone concerning? Is it the condition of the transformer that's actually doing the step down, going from 12,470 volts to 4160? Do we have a concern with specifically the transformer? Do we have an alternative feed that we can kind of use as like a backup in case if one transformer fails? Is the distribution system old, aging, or is it new? And also quantity of meters in each zone to say we have a step-down transformer failure, what kind of impact will it have on the customers, the quantity of customers, the type of customers? And kind of all these factors kind of help us build like a risk factor on that far right column, where that basically tells us with all these different kind of gauges of each zone, which one are we the most concerned about, which one has the most potential to be a concern or a negative impact, and kind of tells us where we should focus our next project at converting that next zone, or improving that next zone. You know, with voltage conversion projects, you're not gonna do one single project and convert an entire zone. It'll be multiple projects over multiple years to eventually chip away at it and completely convert an entire zone. But if you, say for the dock edition, for example, I didn't update this matrix yet, but they're in zone 1, and I don't know how many meters in total would be converted over there, but quantity of meters now would be a lot less than what you see up there. So that would, every time we do a project, we kind of readjust these factors, these gauges, and then that helps us determine, do we continue on for the next project to be in this zone, or is there another zone that has a higher risk factor that we want to focus on?
So, go ahead.
So the dock addition was done because of needing to change the voltage as compared to going underground? Meaning like the aesthetic value of going underground and not having the wind damage? Or the reason why I'm asking that, I'm just trying to get an idea where your what are the priorities, where to go, again, because, you know, as we get into this, my questions too is, where's our next big underground, you know, Is it the east side? Is it, or maybe it's no place. Maybe we're going, no, we're not going underground anymore. And I guess those are the questions that I, in looking at the strategic plan, is like, okay, we're not quite finished with the dock. We're getting there, but you know, in my mind, it's like, where's the next big underground project going?
So you've added up all the little projects that we do that are underground. Since we started the dock edition up till today, it's been a huge project that's been going on. We don't hardly do any new business without making it underground. That's continuing all the time. Out on Overley, new home going out in there, it's 600 and some foot of new underground going to that one house. It's constantly happening all the time.
So these are the factors that we consider when it, but it's not all the factors. There's something you know, but the dock edition had a unique factor in it was rear lot lines, deteriorating infrastructure. You know, those are things that aren't necessary, which it's captured in that distribution system infrastructure condition. So that was I don't think we have another large area that's concerning like the dock edition.
And the reason why I'm asking is because that's the general public, at least this is how I feel, and maybe I'm wrong, the general public looks at like the dock edition they're looking at it, they're not realizing as much of going, of upgrading their service as much as it was going underground, not having to trim trees. A person that I'm working at is so thankful because he was going underground, so he was able to get rid of his mast, got a new roof on, his roof's not leaking anymore because the water was going down his mast, and the winter was going into his box and freezing his whole box. I mean, you know, so they're not looking at, the general public is not going, oh, it's because we got now a different voltage or anything. They're going, oh, we're underground, we got this and that. So there's a different perception, and so those are the reasons why I'm asking, you know, is there another thing on the horizon that when the public looks at it and they're going, oh great, they're going underground here, they're going under, you know, or that, because they don't, I mean, I've said this a lot in the past, that there are still people, I will bet you anything, that there are still people that think the power is being generated out of this building. Like when I grew up when a little kid.
I've had people ask.
And so I get, my point is we either, it's great to know those things. We also need to find a way to toot our horn of we went underground here, we went here, we're doing this, we're doing that.
It'd be kind of cool to see one of these maps that shows above and ground and below ground.
Casey, is that capacity where you're at today on your load? So you're at 75% capacity on the Curtis Cleaners, West, whatever you call that? So you got 25% at the load?
So,
Or is it a lot less than that? You never want to be 100%.
There's been a lot of change to those numbers. And
Okay.
we're working to make those both zero. We don't want those in place anymore.
Okay.
Those are the step-down transformers that create the 4160 voltage that we have out in that area. So the ultimate goal would be to eliminate that
Okay.
completely off of them and just put it on the individual circuits themselves instead of through them step-downs.
So all of those are step down transformers?
Okay.
Everything leaves the substation at 12,470.
Oh, I see, that's the size,
So to
1,500,
yeah,
1,500,
yeah.
5,000, I didn't see that one, okay.
Yeah, our substation transforms from the transmission voltage 138 kV to 12,470, and then it's distributed from there. So all the circuits that leave the substation at that voltage, they have to hit a step-down transformer that it moves from the 12,470 down to the 4160. So I'd say that I just wrote that down. You know, I think communication and education with the public is very important. And I think it's important because the biggest benefit that the customer sees is that aesthetic, you know, it's underground, reliability.
They love the and the gentleman that I was talking about, but it was like, I love the street lights down here. If anybody complains that they're too bright or anything, tell them to go fly, because, again, I'm just reiterating what one of our ratepayers customers
No,
has talked to me about.
Yeah, that's great, because they're really, the other operational benefits that are captured here are really the driving force of where we're going next, and I'll tee up Ryan to, for next, but
Yes, so when Perry was first mentioning the underground part, I guess I thought, well, that could be like an opportunity column in the table, right? But I'm kind of wondering now, are all of the lines in this table are pretty much above ground already? Is there any like low voltage underground stuff?
There's parts and pieces of
Yeah,
each one that are somewhat underground,
But not-
minimal amount.
I was gonna
So
say,
it
really,
sounds like all of these then would just basically, so if you add an opportunity column, they're all gonna be +1 because they're all gonna involve underground and
and I think
potentially, a certain number of
Some
units.
area, some area.
and I don't want to necessarily approach every project and say we're going to carry everything 100%
Right.
underground, because I think we can be strategic and kind of look at what main arteries do we need to have overhead, and what branches can we take underground. Is there a hybrid approach that balances cost and benefit and aesthetics, and where's that sweet spot right in the middle where you get cost effectiveness, you get the aesthetics, you get the operational benefits? Where do all those circles overlap in the Venn diagram? And that's unique to each project, but I don't want to necessarily say we're just going to carry everything underground. I think one of the things that we've learned is the pace of change will dictate some of that. As needs arise, needs will change over time, and we'll have to make that decision as to, is it worth the additional cost to go underground? That benefit, is it truly just aesthetics? Is it reliability? What do we gain from that extra dollar being spent? Knowing that obviously we prefer to carry stuff underground. It's far easier to maintain, provides far more reliability, but at what cost?
I was just gonna, one thing that I kind of wanted to show on here, which is just kind of a neat factor. If you go up to the map, so when I originally made this map, this is the whole dock edition in here. This was all shaded in as well in this zone 1. So I thought it was pretty cool that all the time, all the effort, all the money, all the investment that's gone into this. Essentially, this whole chunk now is taken out of zone 1, and it's a big area. So,
And we have seen the impact, the positive impact on those transformers. They were tied together for a long time, and we're getting close, if we haven't gotten there already, to being able to untie those.
They are.
They are. Yeah, so we have seen those operational benefits. That project's a great project. It's really benefited the overall system, not just the customers that live right there. And that I think is important to consider, is what's the overall system benefit. When you're talking strategically at the board level, it's what's the strategic value in doing this. And you don't, it's hard to find strategic value on an individual customer basis. It's really, what's the system benefit? How do all customers, how do customers on that side of the river who aren't electrically connected at all benefit from something happening at the dock addition? And we already saw it with the outage, that we just happened to know for a fact we avoided a lot of homes not being out. If it were fully converted at that point, it would have freed up our guys to either not work, saves money and trouble. There are a lot of benefits that trickle down to all customers in a storm situation. We can dedicate resources elsewhere. From a cost savings, we can avoid some costs in maintaining that. So we get that benefit across the system, not just for that pocket of customers.
And plus just the efficiency, right?
Yeah.
Or reducing voltage.
Yes. Yeah, just system losses. I mean, there's a lot of benefits. But with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan for what's next. You kind of teed them up, Barry.
Quick question I had on on that, so that is that, I noticed on the, that table, the strategic plan table, that the library step down was a medium priority, but it was started, but a high priority one was not started. And I guess what I'm kind of wondering, did that risk matrix kind of drive that? Because on that matrix that had the library one as being the highest risk rating.
We probably need to, that's an update that needs
So
to be
I just-
updated.
This was also something that we just came up with in the last,
It was February-ish, I think, wasn't
yeah,
it? Yeah.
yeah, less than a year.
I'm just wondering, that's what I was kind of wondering when I saw that that one was started, I thought, well, it's probably a reason
Yeah.
why it got started over a high priority thing, but it sounds like the priority shifted.
Yeah, and I think
That makes sense that we would do that.
And one of the changes we'd like to propose, probably reflected in February, is just getting rid of the projects, you know. When you got that project list, you kind of feel like you march down the list. Oh, we're gonna take this project and this project, but as Casey highlighted, we might do a piece of this project and then determine the next step in that project's not the best next step. It could be do a step here, and start, you know, being very calculated in how we approach it, and constantly reviewing and, you know, on an annual basis, reviewing and updating the risk matrix, so we don't get beholden to a project, you know, because we said we may not do, we're probably not going to do the projects as they were originally defined 3 or
Right.
4 years ago.
Well, it was a 5-year plan.
Yeah,
It's 7 years
It was
before.
a really good start on doing this type of, to implement a plan to start getting rid of this voltage. So I mean,
Right.
it had to start somewhere, so it was a great start, but it needs to be adjusted and adapted. And if we use this map right here to work off of, we can just, we could use each one of these zones, and we're gonna do this section or these couple blocks in zone 2 or zone 1 or wherever the highest priority is, and just keep on plucking away at it. It's gonna be good.
Yeah.
All these projects that have to be adjusted, I think we just eliminate it.
Yeah.
And call it something
call
else.
it zone 1, zone 2,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be.
It'll still be basically the same thing, but it has to be reworded, because a lot of these things don't even make any sense for what we're doing right now, or some of them are done now, and it just has to be adjusted.
And one of the things I did just recall is that was started because we got a really good deal boring under the river at Jackson Street. That was not
Okay, that's
original.
right.
Yeah, it was not originally planned, but I think Ryan got with Severance or whoever the contractor was, and they shot us a great price, and it was, you know, the deal too good to pass up type of thing. But
I think I remember that discussion that you guys were saying, it was not the top priority project, but at this price, it's a good priority.
yeah,
Yeah. And I didn't realize that was how you were doing it. New house pops up, why redo it down the road, let's go underground now. I didn't think it was great.
And the only house that we've stuck with an overhead service on is 510 Kent Street. That brand new house that's going in over there.
Yeah.
It's being built to completely define when it floods in that area, but
Yeah,
we
it's
have,
built up.
no other infrastructure anywhere near there that's underground, and it made pretty much zero sense to do that one underground when there's nothing else in the area that way, and it could be 10, 15, 20 years before we even do that neighborhood, if we ever do, because it's potentially always gonna flood. Not that that matters, everything underground is waterproof and whatnot, but anyway, that's honestly the only one.
There should be lots of this.
What's that, zone 5 or 4?
That's
Dana?
zone 4. See that little sliver, that little tail that's
Yeah.
sticking out there?
Okay.
We're at the end of that.
It's never gonna be underground there, just so you know that. I mean, that's brand new and nice space for cable,
Yeah.
that's in really great shape, and you're already at the right voltage. Everything's awesome right there.
So that little green line is accurate then?
Yes.
Okay.
and that's the line that goes up
That's
to
not
feed,
good.
and it goes up to feed Atwood.
Okay.
There's some little small slivers that go down like Fremont Street and some other stuff, but it's just hard to show that.
Yeah.
Right.
Tailoredly convert it over and.
Casey didn't want to draw it for 3 hours.
Right.
Super cool.
They only had 3 color Sharpies. They couldn't go get a fifth one.
If you look at the risk matrix, you know, the next focus point is across the river, at the library. Ryan, I'll let you kind of talk about our plans for the upcoming year or so.
Like you mentioned a little bit ago, we got a really good deal on that second floor under Jackson Street, so that's where we want to bring Circuit 204 around the back side, all the way around and continually finish that loop. Bring it up into the town over on that side of town so that we can loop it to the other circuit that's over there, so we have a tie potential between two different circuits. So then there's a redundant key, a redundant source over there. Once that's completed, then that section over on the other side of town, I forget what zone it was, but then you can start doing little branches off of that to do voltage conversions over there, to just continue on with that plan. If there's a higher risk area, like all the way up Grindle and out on Plum Street, where the stuff is really getting old and aging, there's some underground out on the end of Plum Street that it's old. I mean, that's something that may come up that we might have to move to a higher priority. So once this other circuit's over there, it's going to make things way easier to just branch off and do little things here or there and just start chasing that 4160 out. It really gives us a lot of flexibility.
So we kind of show them that little
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
sure.
gonna ask you that actually.
like right, Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, right here.
Yep.
We cross, the river is right here.
Okay.
And then we have 12470 run off and kind of meander through here. And that is the location of the step-down transformer for zone 5. So once we get 12470 into this zone, then you can start converting out from that.
Makes it way easier when you have two different sources.
Oh, so you're not trying to convert from the same end you're already.
Yeah, so you have to overbuild over the top of your old with the new, and it's just more costly and more of a pain in the butt, and this gives us a lot more flexibility. The proposed route plan would be right up Jackson to north, and then take a hard left turn on north, and just go straight west, right over Lafayette, and that would be the tie line right there. And then we just branch out from there.
I know a guy lives on that corner.
But and we initially planned on, the main arteries, probably doing a lot of those overhead, and then taking your main arteries and going underground from there, converting houses from there, but still having, your access points, having that main tie line. But it would also, it would give us, right now that side of town doesn't have a redundant feed. So when you look at reliability, yes, you gain a ton of reliability from voltage conversion. You typically hold the 4160 stuff. It's old, aging infrastructure, so you get a lot of reliability there. But not having that redundant source on that side of town, able to get all the way to the step transformers, because just having it on that side of the river doesn't do any good until you can convert it from 12470 down to 4160. Because all the transformers and all the equipment beyond the transformer that step down are designed for that.
So is this something you're talking, I know it's hard to say, a year, 5 years, 10 years from, I guess what I'm leading to, yeah, what I'm leading to is do we need to look at if our budget allows it, do we need to look at more crews, more employees, or are we at the optimum right now, or do we subcontract? When it comes to some things or a lot of things, I'm an impatient person. So, is it something that we, as an organization, we need to? I know when it's hard to guess. You don't want to get everything done, and then all you got to lay off people or whatever. But those are the questions, I guess, that you have to solve or bring to the board and say, those are the things that go across my mind.
Building that extension of Circuit 204 around up Jackson Street and across North Street, we definitely want to entertain having contractors come in there just for the shock and awe factor of they'll come in and just knock it out and get it done, because that's what they need to do to make money, and they'll come in and sell a full string of we have guys that can do it, we have enough people that can do it, but it would just take a long, long time because we gotta stop, we gotta do this, we gotta put this new service, we gotta hang banners, or a street light out, or something else comes along, we just can't stay focused on that 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. So that's what we were looking towards was getting pricing from contractors to come in and do a certain section. Pulling the underground cable under the river and doing the underground portion of it, pretty simple, pretty easy process. We can handle that. We have the pulling capabilities with reaching up our fellow union over in Grand Haven. They'll own us their puller without any problems, just like the circuit 203 under the river that we just finished, or not 203, 204. So that part is pretty simple and easy to do. It's just all of that overhead that takes a lot of time, and they have multiple crews, they have multiple bucket trucks, and they can just focus right on it and just come in and do it. I mean, there's lots of those parts and pieces and tools that are needed to pull in spacer cable wire that we don't have. We have to rent them and then hurry up and try to use them, so you don't have to rent them for multiple months. So contractors have all that stuff. That's what they do all the time. So they'll just come in and just
I can tell you pulling on and off projects is costly. You can't stay on it. Anytime you leave and reorganize your tool, get your stuff out, it's more money.
But
It really is.
when you talk big picture voltage conversion, there's no immediate need to have everything converted. So patience is you know, I know results are great, but I don't see a need right now to. It would have to take on a very large amount of debt to tackle to condense time period, and you know, that's what the risk matrix is for, to help determine. You know, there's some of these areas that we may say it doesn't need to be converted, but we're going to. You know, there's sections that we may say, you know, operationally there's minimal benefits, but you know, there are enough benefits to get there. So each project will run at a little different pace. Each need will be unique, and we'll keep chipping away. But if I put a big picture time frame, we're going to be talking about voltage conversion for 15, 20 years.
I would guess it's probably close to that before we're finally done with it. I mean, like you said, it's going to be fine. The system runs really good, just like it is right now, but there we can go to just be on one voltage and keep phasing it out as we can. But it's always looking to make a move to phase it out. A smart move, and that's what's the highest priority, the greatest risk with the risk matrix stuff. And only a single source circuit on that side of town is a high priority to get something different over there just in case. I mean,
Even if that was 12470 already, that project to carry that other line in there is still top priority.
Well, I guess I like what I see, because I mean, there's action and there's reevaluation, you know, continually going on, and that's a good thing. And just the fact that we are doing stuff. There are, you know, all kinds of industries where you see where people don't keep up with upgrades, and they shoot themselves in the foot. So, yeah, I like what I'm seeing there.
And to that point, you know, one of the important things that we look at from a financial metric is, are we investing? Do our capital investments exceed our depreciation? Are we outpacing our system? Are we investing in it faster than it depreciates in value? And if you're not, eventually your system deteriorates. And there are a lot of electric systems in general. I use co-ops, communities across the board that have not invested in their system. And you know, I don't know what it was, what's been invested in the past here, but you know, we have a need to continue to invest in the system. That's why we're doing it. You know, I think there was a little bit of catch-up work potentially, you know, for just talking with Steve about, you know, his philosophy over the last 5 years of investing in the system. So it's something that we're very aware of, and really starts with board support for doing these projects.
Okay, since you mentioned that there was a high priority to kind of add that second connection to the northeast node, but that wasn't on one of these lists of projects, right?
It's embedded in.
Yeah.
It's embedded in one of them.
Yeah.
Oh, it is?
But when, it's one of the reasons we're getting away from the project.
Yeah, so it sounds like that would have been a priority that I would expect to see on here.
Yeah, it was just kind of, it was part of
But it was
something
wrapped
you
into the
had,
voltage
yeah.
conversion.
Yeah, it was wrapped up in, you know, it's one of the another real, not realization, but other learning moment from the project we've done is that we're trying to bite off annual budget size projects. You know, if a full project's $2 million, our capital budget's not $2 million in any given year, so you either have to break it up over multiple years or you have to look at debt. And I think we can effectively piece it together at this point, annual budget year at a time. So that piece is probably gonna be $600,000, just that one piece, and it's a fraction of one of those projects. So it was one of those, we just need to reevaluate, learn from what's been done. Nothing that's been done in the past was ever wrong or done poorly. It's just, this is the natural adjustment based on progress that we've made so far.
Yeah, other things we have to look at, I think, is something that falls into the strategic plan too is, yeah, we want to do that project, but with the cost and lead times of materials, do we want to do it this coming season, or do we want to take our chances and pull back one more year to let things kind of even out? Because right now, underground cable is probably at a premium. I mean, just schedule 42-inch PVC conduit is $34 and whatever a stick, a 10 foot, it's $3.45 a cord. That's unbelievable. I mean, even at 7 some, a 10-foot stick is what we used to pay. I mean, that seemed right way back. I mean, over 2 years ago is all, but it's ridiculous. I mean, so wire costs are going to be pretty crazy next season. Underground cable, I can't even imagine what the cost of that's going to be. Maybe we only do the overhead portion of it and stop where it would dive down underground and go into the river, because we could still energize it from 208 around that way, and then do the last piece of the underground maybe next season, because this is going to cost just because of the materials. I mean, that's other thing we have to look at all the time. This is just, this whole material thing is so crazy. I mean, it's hard to keep track of what we've ordered because you expect it to already be here. And, well, they got delayed, and you do have it on order, but if it got delayed 2 months, and it's like, oh shoot, well, we need these things here, but how do you figure this all out? We go crazy on this stuff. I mean, ordering things 50 weeks out, we don't even know if we're going to get them 50 weeks from now. We don't even know if we need them 50 weeks from now. I mean, this is, how do you even plan all this stuff?
We're experiencing that too. They're talking 18 to 24 months before you might see some relief. So just think, if you're thinking it's a year,
Right.
you're talking 18 to 24 months to get the chain, and what we need in our industry, it's everybody. So my hat's off to you if you can make it work and keep these projects moving, because it is tough. I'm telling my customers, you know, we'll see you maybe 4 months, because I mean, that's what it's taking. Sorry.
Well, we haven't had to jury rig anything yet, so we're
Right.
doing good.
Well, like what you were saying though about putting the projects on there, because I mean, I guess really that's more of a goal, right? A list of goals, and a project's not so much a goal. I mean, it's a long-term. I mean, maybe you could put voltage conversion as one line item, but it sounds like there should have been other things, or there should be other things on there, like a second tie to the northeast section, or whatever other, you know, well, even just like putting up the squirrel guards, right? I mean, that seems like something that would be on there. It's, eventually, we'd like to get those on all the poles, but it's just ongoing.
And please keep the poles on the south side of North Street. I hate those 3 beautiful maple trees I got in my yard.
We could go a little taller to try to minimize the trimming. I think we'll be in good shape.
Okay.
It won't be too bad.
All right.
Just requesting.
Yeah, fair enough. I get it.
If you drive down Lafayette Street and just see how tidy and nice that
Those
line
tall.
looks. And
You
it's
could
all
actually put in
compact.
taller poles, is that what you?
Yeah,
would
yeah,
that line?
the hope would be to go a little taller than what's there right now, so that the new stuff would be slightly above, and then it really does minimize the amount of, there isn't, I don't think there's, maybe up on the corner of
They are, that's too bad.
Yeah,
That's like a
but
big one.
there isn't much tree trimming needed in that route.
All right, we're gonna roll on. Then we thought we talked quite a bit about voltage conversion. That definitely occupies a lot of what we're doing, especially really from Ryan's perspective. I spent quite a bit of time messing with that. But we'll move on to some of the distribution-related projects. Wanted to ask Megan and Ryan to touch base on the Paperlight inventory management system. We touched base last week, last board meeting, I believe. I think somebody asked about it, but wanted to just specifically bring that up because it does reflect here that it was, timeline was fiscal year 2021, which is passed. So we'll be making an update to that, but with that, I wanted to provide an update on the project.
Welcome back to our board meetings, Megan. Got daddy daycare going on tonight?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure do. I guess from my side of things, and obviously what I've been doing is going on hold a little bit. But everything is set up kind of on the back end. So once we actually get the inventory where we want it, where the guys want it, over at the warehouse, mostly just start getting time to be able to do that, and just started looking at doing conversion projects. So,
Well, you're a little busy too.
yeah, also a little busy in office, but yeah, I think that's kind of really what's hindering that project, is just time at the moment.
In our meeting last week, we talked about, it is busy right now with lots of other things, but coming right up, it's not very many months away. The next time we need to do our inventory, we're gonna just set aside a couple more days or even a week if it takes that to just completely go through everything and make it like we want it. I mean, right now the mezzanine room does have all the bins and the shelves and everything is in there, it's just, it needs to be like really organized and just make it awesome. And also implement this whole system at the same time, and we figured that that has to happen. The inventory stuff has to happen at that time, so we'll just set aside time to just make it go right then. Like, no matter what, that's what we're gonna do. That's what we think we're gonna do. That's our tentative plan at this point. Because we have to start somewhere, and I honestly don't see when that's gonna happen. We'll mess with it throughout the winter because it is on our rainy day or inclement weather day duty list is good. We have two different colored bins, so all of the minor material parts go in one color and all of our inventory items go in a different color, just to make it easier for what items need to be actually logged out of our new system. Rearrange all that and just make it organized.
Can I, and again, I can't remember, I'm sorry. Is this a barcode with a wand type, so you're gonna, you're getting this item out of this bin and you cheek and, okay.
There's actually a nice little handheld, it's an 8 or 9-inch screen iPad type thing that has a scanner built right into it so that you can go, well, we need 2 cutouts and 3 arresters for this particular project. You go scan them out of the material right then, inject them, or remove them from that work order number, and it automatically kicks them right out the quantities right then.
I love that.
It's really nice.
And then we can use it also, if you get 50 arresters or 50 cutouts that come in on a shipment, use the same thing to put them into the inventory.
Scan 1 times 50? Put that easy,
Assume so.
yes.
No, I think you can put quantity in there. I think there's a drop down box for quantity, so that, yeah, it is gonna be just like that. We have to make her, we have a plan for labels and just have to finish that stuff.
Yeah. Some of ours works by weight too, so you don't have to barcode everything. You put a weight on it. If it weighs 100 pounds, you know you have X number of these small little gadgets in there. It's very nice.
Yeah, so this project we originally thought would be done by June, but some of the delays were not out of not wanting to do it. It was needing to find the time, and then a lot of the delays are not necessarily delays. It was just a very thoughtful process. So didn't fully implement it last year because the system is now better. You know, moving to minor material, you know, some background changes in how we handle inventory will make this system, it'll improve our inventory management period with this system or without it, but it was something that would really enhance the system if we could get some things in place before we went fully live. So that's some of the delays, is just enhancing it, make sure we get the most out of it. You know, we could have had it up and running right now, but it wouldn't be as good as it's going to be with the foresight and thought that's been put into it. So
Are these items, they'd be billed out to, when you go click, it'll be billed out to this project or that project, and does it, again, I don't know how some of those things are done. I know that a lot of times you're out, are there times when you actually bill a ratepayer or a customer?
Yep.
So that would actually, as soon as you click that, that's gonna automatically generate a bill for that
It
customer?
wouldn't automatically do that, it would just keep track of the parts that were used on that work order, and you would have to go in there, most guys would have to go in there and make sure and write up a bill for it. Typically do that ahead of time to make sure the customer knows what their upfront cost is. Like, for instance, the new one on Overly out there, it's quite a lengthy ways off the road, and it's gonna be underground, but they suggested that's what they would like to have, so there is a fair amount of cost to that customer, minus our aid in construction amount that we will deduct from that's gonna be billed. So yeah, that's, charge out each piece and part to that particular work order number, and then that keeps track of it in the system, and then we know what we use for it.
all right, just a couple items we wanted to touch on from under the distribution related projects. Like I said, we have to touch on anything else. The next one I'll touch on is demand response program. We've got that slated for this year. We haven't started it. It's something that's been identified over the since February. Really, it's come out of the Consumers IRP, is a need to partner with MPPA on this. And so some of this will be, it's on their radar, but their skill sets that they have and their understanding of the MISO grid and kind of all the things that they do to support us will be extremely valuable when we develop a demand response program. So we will be.
So, I'm sorry, being an idiot, but, so what is a demand response?
That's a great, so it can mean a lot of things. In general, it means shaving off our peak demand. So I'll give you ideas of what demand response is.
So it's not, because I'm thinking, again,
Guys in trucks.
I was thinking of guys in trucks going someplace to a response.
No, this is more getting customers to, no, yeah, that's fair enough. It's getting customers to minimize their peak usage. So
Okay.
if, on a a couple different scales, one example of a demand response program is it's really popular in Florida is, remote control, like being able to remotely control HVAC units and water heaters. So where the complexities come in is you have to incentivize the customer to do it. So what's the benefit that they receive, and that's where MPPA comes in. But if you look more locally, what could it mean for us if we have so many charges that are determined by our peak load. If we were in August and we're watching our load and it gets pretty high, we call on a demand response program, call on our 5 biggest customers, say they've all contracted with us for some financial benefit to agree to shed so much load. So hypothetically, we call King Milling and they've agreed through a contract to shed a megawatt of load at 30 minutes notice for a certain duration. Obviously there's got to be a financial windfall for them and for us So a demand response program would be developing that so that we could call them and say, by contract, we need you to, we're enacting this contract, we need you to shed load.
That's kind of the opposite of what MISO does with their generators, right?
Yeah, they call on us when they need us. It's a grid support. It's a grid support mechanism of if you can lower the overall system demand, you're less taxing on your generators. For us, it would be beneficial from a long-term capacity accreditation. It's about minimizing that top requirement through programs and customer actions. That's the big thing. It's a customer action, not a utility action to shed that load. So that's a demand response program in a nutshell. So, but it's potentially a tool to meeting some of our capacity future capacity short position. And that's where PPA comes in to help guide contracts and impact to MISO and our capacity accreditation, and, behind the meter resources, load modifying resources, all kind of get brought into the conversation. But wanted to just bring that up because it's probably going to be delayed out some.
Do we do any kind of audits or not audits, but recommendations or analyses of our direct customers? I don't remember who, but I thought someone told me a story about we had a customer that had 3 AC units on a big facility or something, and they would always turn them on at the same time, run them for an hour, and shut them off, or something like that. And then we said, you could just turn one on, turn it off, and turn on the second one, turn it on, and then the third, and it'll save you a way bunch on your bill because your peak goes way down.
Yeah,
And do we do that where we go to them and kind of say, hey, describe to us how you're operating, and we can tell you how you can, save on your bill or kind of reduce our demand or kind of efficiency.
It's something we need to be more proactive, but yes, it's something that we will do through the key accounts program. But obviously with Sharon's retirement, with bringing Lisa on, we've got some growth again as a utility to get back in front of them. COVID was also a challenge, but yes, the goal is yes, as a simple answer. But right now, probably not as much as we could. But I also say controlling demand is very difficult, and I typically don't. If you focus on energy savings, you typically reduce your demand anyways. But if you put a bunch of effort into bunch of time and money into controlling your demand, as soon as you miss it for a half hour, you have no return on your investment. Where if you put energy efficiency products in, light bulbs are the easy one. You put LEDs, anytime that light is on, you're realizing some return on investment. You're also reducing your overall demand. So there's very few low-hanging fruits like that one, where it's just obvious that we can cut it. If you change something very small, we can cut your demand. A larger industrial customer, their demand is typically a product of how they need to operate. Because I've tried, a lot of times you chase those rabbits and it's hard to realize some results for the customer. But there are opportunities, but we do more energy savings through EWR, through those energy efficiency programs, and the waters kind of get blended, everything gets kind of blended together in there. So.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about just demand, but
yeah, so we do energy and demand kind of fall behind. Another one that we wanted to just touch on briefly was the OMS system. We've recently met and just to talk about it. I guess OMS is an outage management system. I forget that we all live in acronym world, and maybe do some, or may have been forgotten. But OMS is an outage management system. I think I don't think we have a recommendation at this point to remove this item from the strategic plan action item list. It's a great product, but there's just not a high priority need for us today to have an outage management system. We have a quasi outage management system with our AMI system. They let us know The guys can navigate, you know, even in a bigger outage, they can navigate where the root causes of the outages are. So we don't need that predictive analysis that you get from an OMS system, as much as some other more dispersed system, utilities have. We also have a highly reliable system. So, you know, a return on investment would be very lengthy, and we just don't feel like the benefits stack up at this point to match the cost that it would take to implement. So we are making a recommendation to remove that item and just keep it on the radar. If we see the need, you know, we're all aware of it. And we all know what an outage management system is, and if things change over the years and it becomes more relevant, more necessary, we could reintroduce it. But at this point, the recommendation is to go ahead and remove it from the list.
This is a system that would, like, in an outage and help people know where to go.
Yeah. What they do is they use a fairly simple algorithm to say, if we know all these customers are out, what's the first upstream device that could be causing it? Oh, it's this fuse. Well, let's check beyond the fuse. If all the customers upstream from the fuse are on, it knows, yes, you need to go to this fuse. Ryan can do that in his head most of the time.
Yeah.
So, but yes,
We would expect all of the guys to be able to do that in their head with our
Yeah.
system, just because they should know that. I mean, it just may be somewhat complacent if you had a system that was telling you what to do. That's why we feel like the system that we have now with the AMI email notifications and the guys' knowledge of the system, they're getting their emails at home or on their way in, because the NRTC calls them out in the middle of the night. They already have an idea. Probably right at the corner. This fabulous fuse got blown, or the tree gets pulled. I mean, they kind of already know in their heads where the issue is.
but the one downside is with the move to the new portal, we're going to lose the customer-facing map. And an OMS system would give us a customer-facing map. I'll make the statement that it's a good thing to get rid of what we currently have, because it pinpoints individual outages. And in a bad situation, a lengthy outage, when customers know exactly where to go to find crews, they will go. I've been in situations where guns have been involved, and people get, which we're lucky and fortunate, we have a highly reliable system. Day 3, squirrely people get squirrely. So, it's not, yes, I'd love to have a customer-facing map, but I think there's alternative communication methods that we can engage with our customers to help educate them as outages happen. But currently to pinpoint individual locations for outages is probably not best practice, I would say. And that is going away with the new portal.
I'd say, OMS systems are mandatory for like a huge distribution system with multiple substations, and covering an entire county or multiple counties.
I've showed them pictures of the OMS system we had previous employer, and when you've got 75% of your system out, and you're scattered even, and we're a relatively small system, we're 20,000 customers, and you stack that up to consumers, it's a pin drop. But yeah, once you get to that scale, you can't track down. When you're looking at 15,000 individual outage tickets, you can't piece them together like Ryan can do. But with the number of customers, the dense system, the knowledge that we have, the benefits that a larger, more dispersed system gains from OMS, we just don't realize those benefits. So.
Will the new portal still at least have like an outage awareness?
We'll have to look at that. I think I think there's other communication streams, social media, website, other avenues that we can get information out to customers in the event that it's a substantial outage. Small, 99% of our outages probably don't require public communication.
I'm thinking more of just if your power goes out and then if your portal says, yep, we know someone's there.
That's the biggest benefit.
That's the main thing. It's just knowing that someone's taking care of it.
Yes,
The
that
current
is,
map doesn't say that.
I know.
It just shows a pin
Yeah.
that the person's out, it doesn't show any update, so.
I think if we educate and talk about all the benefits of our AMI, our customers know that we know.
Yep.
You know, so yes, you love a light switch change, but it's more gradual to educate the public, get them, educate the public on capabilities and functionality. But at the same time, I also don't necessarily want to give 100% confidence to the customer that we're gonna know, because as soon as they assume, oh yeah, they've told me they're gonna know, something won't work right. So, we don't wanna promote, 100%, don't ever call us if you're out, because we already know. But I do think there's an education piece in letting people know that, yes, our AMI system notifies us when we lose communication with your computer. Brian, did you want to touch on any other distribution-related projects? I don't say.
So where are we with the GIS system?
Oh, all right, we can do that too. So that's something that we are, we kind of regrouped this year on the GIS system to say, where are we at, what do we need, how do we get from where we're at to where we want to be. And this year we engaged, we budgeted about $10,000 to bring in GRP to help us establish some more foundational database structure, and that's going to really drive the full implementation. So the goal by the end, this is one of the updates that we'll probably push this out again until next year, but we're making good progress on it. It's also, with the amount of workload that we have, it's tough to dedicate big chunks of time to this. So we've kind of set a goal of chipping away at it this year, working with GRP, getting their building knowledge, and then going from there and really fine-tuning the last pieces to make it really functional.
What was the GIS, what does GIS stand for?
Geographic Information System.
Okay. So
it's the geolocating and computer databasing of all of our field assets, basically.
And not the, so, I mean, so I guess, like with that, how big a priority, or, again, I'm, in my mind, I'm thinking outside the box, trying to think outside the box. Do we hire a temp to come, because isn't it, you're going around and you're going here and you're clicking, and then you're going here and clicking, and then you're going here and clicking, and to get the whole system set up on that. So my question is, do we hire a temp to come in? I mean, so I'm not sure it's the best use of our linemen, to Ron, for anybody that we have, cost-wise, to have them going out there with this and going click, 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 whereas to me, the possibility exists to hire a temp, show them what they have to do, and they go out and go click, click, click. Because isn't that kind of what it is?
It's definitely a little more involved than that, because they will be taking an inventory of everything on the pole, knowing they'll need to be able to identify what framing is it, what type of transformer, what's the voltage, is it telephone, who owns the telephone, is it AT&T on the pole, is it Comcast on the pole? But so I would also say your answer's right, that we don't necessarily think it's, for one, it's going to be, the opportunity cost is what I'm going to be more concerned with, is if they're doing that, what else aren't they doing? But this year, the focus is really on the database foundation, and that's absolutely something that Megan's very involved with, because it's going to tie back to inventory. Casey's involved because it really, he's got a knack for the database and the computer side of things, and Ryan's involved because he manages the distribution system. So I'd say this year, in doing the foundational work, it's really management level development. But once you get that foundation in place, yeah, you can train people quick. I had, it's where I got my start in working with utilities is implementing these systems, and I can tell you, you can train a lot of people to do the click part.
Well,
I had a lot of,
going
a lot of.
I know she's busy with the city, but Nancy, I mean,
Yeah, we will look for very cost-effective ways to do
Okay.
the field collection side of things. And a lot of it's done.
And, you know, the, kind of working with GRP engineering right now is to get us to that point where we can field collect.
Okay.
Kind of get everything organized, different apps that we have to use, and how they access our databases, what kind of data we're trying to collect, data formats. So it's kind of figuring out all the details of the data and getting everything usable on a tablet, and that's where we're working with GRP engineering right now to get to that point.
Well, we'll move on a little bit, down to generation-related items and projects. A couple updates. We would recommend removing the first two items. The first items that feasibility study around was / radial risk. That island mode, it was really more about island mode. We captured that pursue options and solutions to reduce the radial risk elsewhere. So it's kind of become redundant because Casey did the feasibility study on the island mode, and I think we're all in agreement that it's not something that we want to continue to pursue at this point based on the capital investment that would be required to do it. So we are recommending to update the action item list by striking both of those items. But with that, I'll
One's really complete,
yeah.
feasibility study.
Yeah, we did do a feasibility study on the radial risk mitigation, and that's something we
Right,
will
but
want
that's
to.
moved up.
Yeah, it's captured elsewhere, and we're going to involve GRP in helping evaluate options. It's going to be an ongoing process. That's
Yeah,
not.
I just wanted to know that it's not, we're not just taking it off the list and
No.
not to do it anymore. It's like, no, we actually, it was a priority and we did it.
Yeah.
right, but, and so is there, in the whole scheme of things, will there be another page? So I guess my point is the feasibility study in island mode, that someplace it should be,
You mean the list of completed things?
well, completed, that we looked at it and we've said, we're not gonna, we've decided that against going in that direction or anything.
Oh, you
And
mean like the OMS and the?
so that gives
What are the
a board 10 years from now, when possibly none of us are, the chance, hopefully we all are, but could be that it's completely changed, and so that they're not trying to reinvent the wheel or going, let's look at this, you know what I'm saying?
I definitely see.
Some kind of documentation that says,
10 years, it might be feasible.
Well, and that's the only thing that's what I was thinking. I don't.
okay,
I think you would have to qualify why it was removed, and because if you don't give a future you, really any reasoning behind the why did it get removed? It may not be relevant anymore. OMS is one that very well, our needs could change 3 years from now. We say no, we need to get this back out. Doesn't necessarily matter why we didn't do it 3 years ago. The circumstances have changed, but I do think there's something to be said about trying to, maybe not in this document, but keep a separate list of items that have been removed with some notes as to when they were removed, why they were removed. That way, if you did ever ask me, hey, was this on your, we'd at least have something we could pull up and have a record of it. But I think it would get very cumbersome to try and include that in this
right,
document.
oh, I'm not saying that.
I do think there's value.
Some kind
in it.
of record.
Yeah, absolutely. Casey, do you want to touch on comprehensive strategy for CTs? We've made some progress. This year's been an interesting year with gas prices and getting the turbines back up and running, but recently we've focused on the staff side of things, I'll let you kind of run with kind of some of the conversations we've had, stuff that you've kind of been working on.
Sure. As far as comprehensive strategy, natural gas prices are rising. Last 4 months, they almost tripled. And that's obviously impacting our ability to operate and operate just to cover costs of operation. So it's that factor. We're also looking at kind of long-term strategies for trying to improve power output of the generators, one generator. We're looking at the water injection system, which can ultimately produce more power, and if we can inject more water into the unit. So, actually, last year compared to this year, or this year compared to next year, we actually added 200 kilowatts of capacity to one of the turbines, just by adding more water injection to it. And we think we could potentially add about 200 more with some other PLC programming modifications. Ultimately, 95% of the value of those combustion turbines is the capacity credits that they provide. They're not extremely economical as far as operating due to fuel costs and just their ability to convert the fuel BTU energy to electrical output on the generators. So we will always be monitoring the market to see if we can operate them for profit, but the vast majority of their benefit, their financial benefit to Lowell Lake Power is the capacity credits that we bring.
Yeah, so we're constantly looking at when, and this is one of those items that it's got a timeline on it. It's really an ongoing thing. We're never done because, you know, the gas market's changed and it changed our strategies. So it is, and as you know, every time we run them, if there's new issues that are found, it changes how likely or how eager we are to run them the next time, because we don't want to jeopardize that capacity credit. Capacity accreditation would be very costly to fulfill on the open market. So, you know, we're constantly talking about, do we economically dispatch them, or do we just dispatch them during required times for grid support? Something that we've tackled recently from a strategy standpoint is how we staff it. Casey is our go-to person, but it takes two people. Right now, we're very reliant on Tom, who's great. Super flexible schedule, just very committed. We're not going to find another person that wants to work 500 hours with the 500 hours a year with the skill set that Tom brings and the flexible schedule like he does. So, you know, one of the strategy components we've been considering is how we staff it. And Brian and the distribution guys have recently gotten involved in some training and participated in a run operation. So we're looking at training generation department operation assistants, or however we want to classify them. And we're really looking at how do we ensure availability and our ability to run them when we are called upon. Because from a strategy standpoint, we are required to operate them if MISO calls on us, and if we don't, there's a financial penalty. So how do we ensure that even if Tom is on vacation, we can adequately staff the department on a Saturday night, in the winter, if they call us, it's probably gonna be overnight, it's not gonna be during normal hours. So how do we leverage our existing workforce to give Casey the support he needs? Another strategy is just, things we can work on is just an attention to the status of them. So at any given point, MISO knows the status as, are they available, are they running, are they available, are they not available, and keeping that updated in real time is very important. It doesn't change much, but it is something that as the grid gets more and more destabilized, we do anticipate MISO calling on operations more. So in order to maintain that capacity accreditation, not receive financial penalties for not operating, staffing is one of our biggest strategic hurdles at this point to make sure we can staff it when we need to. So that's a pretty big strategic shift over the last, when you run, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
Last week.
Yeah. Last week?
Do you have to run them on, if you don't use that on a regular basis, you have to test run them every so often then too,
Yeah.
to meet that criteria?
Yep, our goal is to eventually operate them once a month, just
Okay.
exercise them.
You need 2 men for that then too, just to run the test?
Yes, yep. Yeah, and that's mainly because of the high pressure gas, natural gas that's required for them, the hazard that is, potential hazard that has, also just the high speed machinery could be a hazardous thing to be around as well. So we always have 2 people just to be there in case something happens.
What do we currently do now? Casey is on vacation.
The units go into a planned outage mode. So there's no penalty to put them in planned outage. So if we don't have the staffing available, we make sure that status is reflective of its availability. And they sat in planned outage for the entire Energy Center renovation. So.
And most of the parking lot renovation
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah, and a lot of the parking lot renovation. So they can sit there. Obviously, we want to have them available if we can, but yeah, if we can't, then we just make sure it's reflected. Any other questions on generation related topics, projects, anybody? All right, we'll move on to administrative financial. I'll touch base real quick just on the social media and marketing strategy. It's something that, Craig, you heard at the MMEA conference, just to focus on promoting public power in general and the need for it. So it's something that we've started. Emily Mackey is one of our newer employees. She is taking over the communications.
She's the new Sharon.
No, she is the new vacant seat. She filled.
Yeah, communication is what her title is.
Yeah.
What is it?
Several people in there, so.
Yeah, that seat has moved a little bit. Deborah was the last one in that seat. Before that, it sat empty for quite a while. Bailey, yeah, people that I never worked with personally. So yeah, she comes with a social media background and a marketing background. So we're wanting to strategically improve that. I would anticipate bringing some ideas to the board for board feedback, and probably not no need for a formal adoption, but just to keep the board in the loop and make sure you guys have the opportunity for feedback. But it's something that is on our radar and something we're actively working on, and it ultimately will involve everybody as we all, marketing is going to be a company-wide thing. So and no one person will be responsible for all content or everything. It'll be a team effort to make sure we're promoting equitably across the board and highlighting all the good things that we do. So looking forward to getting that out.
A few meetings ago, you talked about staff coming in and doing some presentations. Would she be doing that presentation on the marketing as a filler?
I wouldn't want to commit her right now.
Okay.
Just because she's got obviously responsibilities outside of work. And I
Okay.
wouldn't want to commit her without talking to her.
No, I understand.
I like having the staff here at the
Yeah, I
meetings.
mean, we talked about it.
Yeah, I like the board here.
did, and talked about bringing people in and discuss that, and if she's the marketing expert,
Yeah, we would.
throw it out there.
Yes, absolutely. All right, so I'm gonna look down at the far end of the table. Anything you guys want to touch on, or any questions that anybody has, or any items you'd like us to touch on under the administrative and financial projects? And there's a lot of them, and a lot we could talk about. And if not, I've got a couple high level points I'll make, but.
So I have, can you go back one? So I'm just saying that the customer survey, for me, I would like to, it would be a high priority, because I just, and to develop a customer survey, so examples, would you pay more for renewable energy? There's so many questions that I feel like we as a board assume or try to, that it's not always backed up by what our ratepayers would really like to see in it. So I just feel like for me, I would say I'd like, as a board member, all these other things are great, but for a board member, it would be would be very meaningful to me to have some kind of customer survey that, and when I say survey, it's not, oh, how'd you like your service this week? It's getting in depth and saying, would you pay more for renewables? Would you, different things that then help the board direct in what direction that the board should be going in. So again, and that's me. The rest of the board might not feel that way. I just wanted to touch base on that a little bit.
So is this like a one-time survey, or is this a recurring?
So there's two types of surveys, obviously. There's a survey that's a benchmarking survey. It's typically your customer service type, but and you track that over time to measure your JD Power, or whatever the group is. I can't think. There's groups that you see do that. That's one. That's not necessarily the route that I would prefer. I would prefer to do more of a one-time, gauge our customers. I also say I have participated in trying to plan these, and survey writing is a very complicated process, more so than I ever would have thought. But you can get natural biases in how you ask questions. What's your survey medium? If you go all online, you're gonna miss a population. If you go all paper, you're gonna miss a population. If you try to do a hybrid approach, you may get people. If you give multiple opportunities, the people that are at the bookends, super supportive of us or super hating us, they're going to go engage more than in the middle of the road. So it's a far more complicated process than I thought. But I would also agree that I think I'd be very supportive of moving that to a high priority item, because I think it sets a benchmark, or not a benchmark, but it gives the board an opportunity to get a gauge of the pulse of what our customers want. And I think that's a great tool for the utility to have.
I know that at the Blues and the department I work in, marketing, we have a yearly stakeholders survey.
Yeah.
And it's very important survey that we, as the employees, will benchmark where our goals are going to be. And I know it's just once a year, and it used to drive me crazy because I wanted it maybe quarterly, if not every 6 months, like twice a year. So we can react quickly if often. But the yearly benchmark that we go through, at least, and they've never wavered, it still, it helps us a lot. It helps us as the employees understand, and my directors and who we have those meetings with, we have their voice, and then we can say, hey, guess what, I talked to you about that 4 months ago. You know, and it's here. Now can we do something about it? And that's the great tool that we love to have, because it's not just me saying, I think that there's a problem here. It's coming from the people that pay my wages, and your wages, and your wages. So, I think it's very important.
I would agree.
Question about the line item, what it actually means.
Yeah.
What is general manager succession plan?
That was one I inherited, I'll be honest. It's one of the items I have highlighted. I think, honestly, Steve gave me a roadmap. I think it's something we could probably remove. I mean, all the documents. What's that?
They asked, I remember we talked about.
We did.
We talked about having this added in there once a while back. I
Yes, we
remember
did.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what it is, so basically, from my understanding from the board, what it was is, so, God forbid, something that would happen to Charlie,
God
or that he decides to move on to someplace else, his wife can't stand the cold here, or whatever the case may be, that we would have some kind of succession plan in process, so that the board, that we didn't have to sit there and invent something, that we had, so these are the steps.
Gotcha.
Because that's who we are responsible to, or for, is the general manager. Ryan, everybody else in the system, that's the responsibility of the general manager. So we've always wanted some kind of succession plan, so that we would have a plan that we could take off the shelf and say, these are the things that we need to do for Light and Power to continue on being successful, etc. So that's kind of what.
Okay, I just wasn't sure what the context of succession meant, and I get it, yep.
Just in case something happened to Charlie.
And Steve gave me a good roadmap. So,
Right.
I mean,
And maybe
Steve-
it's no longer a high priority because we
Right.
have it in place, but maybe it is now a lower priority because we have it.
And it should be reviewed regularly. I mean, because the
It
document, the documents that Steve provided have contacts, all the relevant information for somebody to be able to walk in and say, here's my contacts, here's kind of big picture, no matter what, somebody's gonna have to dive in and figure it out, but, as a utility, we've gone through the hiring process, so there's kind of a roadmap for a hiring process.
Just not 3.5 hour interview, right? Okay.
3.5 hours.
It worked.
It worked.
House back.
Just preparing them for the meetings.
But that's what that, I guess, but it was.
I guess, so
I guess you
I would, if it said contingency plan or something like that, maybe
Yeah.
I would have understood what it meant, but whatever. I mean, now I know,
Makes
so
sense.
that's all that's important.
I mean, really, you could kind of roll out into a previous item, right, fix that business continuity plan.
Yeah.
Disaster response, something.
Yeah, well,
Great.
yeah, it's really just, what do we do if something goes crazy? So either there's like a crazy storm, or something happens to a key employee, or, yes. That was just making sure everybody had what they needed to keep moving.
So you want to scroll to the next page and keep moving?
What's the, so I was gonna ask, leveraging data systems for proactive decisions, is there?
There's no real set goal. It really needs to just, one of the things I want to do is, and I didn't want to do it before this meeting, is take everything that says ongoing and move it to the ongoing page. There's an ongoing page for a reason, and this is one that's never going to be done. We use it regular. We're going to try and help. Jim reached out asking for detailed usage data on the showboat or something, and that's just extra data that we can use. We can leverage that data to help them. It's not really a proactive decision, but the whole risk matrix for the voltage conversion is leveraging data, looking at our GIS systems, looking at our AMI system, what data, heck, they had an outage 2 days ago, 2 nights ago, last night, I can't remember.
It's a couple months ago,
Yeah, I don't know what happened yesterday, 2 days ago, or a week ago. But, it was one of the things they came in and said, what happened? Well, let's look at the data. Well, they found out that load characteristics had changed and transformer needed to be upgraded. So that was more reactionary, but it would be proactive compared to the way it would have been done in the past. In the past, without that data, you typically refuse it and say, sounds good. That one we probably would have looked at it a little closer, but maybe not. But it's just using that data that we have and making sure we get the most out of it. Although I can't think of any other examples we've done recently, but
I mean, the time of use analysis was based
that's
on AMI.
perfect. Yep, that's perfect. That's leveraging data to make proactive decisions. That's a great example.
Actually, Andrew, I think that line item was your,
Right,
you mentioned that at the board meeting, so.
right, and so I was trying to get a feel of what was the context, right, so.
Was that like customer data, like the formal stuff is like, yeah, it's down here. It's just like with the GIS system, the AMI, and all these like systems that we can now gather data from to make it a point to gather data.
Yes.
So we could use it at some point if we needed it.
And all of that will go into system planning. GRP has a window or a program, engineering analysis program. The more data you put into the engineering analysis, the better the data you put in, the better the information you get out. So, it's a continual process. You make a lot of, in general, you make a lot of assumptions. Well, as you can use data to eliminate assumptions, you just fine tune your data. So whether it's distribution system optimization or rate optimization, there's a lot of opportunities to just get more. One of the opportunities right now is talk about proactive. Is we've got the grow operation going at the old Admiral warehouse. Use data to not need to purchase a transformer. Looked at AC and Ryan looked at all the transformers, looked at what's overloaded, what's not overloaded, what's underloaded, and what transformers can we move around so we don't have to go buy, that transformer's gonna be a $20,000 transformer. Well, we might be able to shift a few, spend some labor dollars and some opportunity cost to maximize and right-size transformers throughout the system. We might find that we don't need a really big transformer. We need to shift everything down the line and buy a really small transformer and potentially save thousands of dollars that way. We use the term right-sizing transformers a lot in our conversations. So, as we look at the Admiral building, we're hoping that that's a new load shape. They'll go in multiple phases, and if we can get information from phase 1, they'll help comparison for phase 2, and that way we're just not shooting in the dark.
I'm kind of wondering about, because we talked earlier about some other ongoing ones. I wonder if it'd be worthwhile to periodically review what we've done in these ongoing things, because all of these are kind of goals, right? So they're projects that we either decide we completed them or we decide not to pursue them anymore. But these ongoing ones, if they just sit there, how do they work as a goal, right? So I kind of think it'd be worth, I don't know how often, but either as part of the next strategic plan review or maybe at some other time, just kind of go through, hey, for this particular item, what's happened under this item, or what has this item kind of driven us to do?
Instead of just saying, nope, we moved it out of sight, out of mind. Let's bring it back to the forefront, focus on it a little bit. Make sure we still feel like we are ongoing, because if we've stopped doing something, it's not ongoing. It's done.
Yep.
And your Andrew's maybe spot on, because I'm gonna ask a question, because I can't remember where we are with that. Because I didn't know, I know it was tied to a few things, but the fully fund the pension plan, if I recall, Steve had, and maybe the rest of you can help me out, that it was in a, where he was getting the funds, but it was like in if I recall, it was like in 2 or 3 years, by doing that, we were gonna have that completely funded.
I think it's what that shows, right, 2026?
That's something I want to touch on.
Okay.
It may change.
I think that's an overly aggressive goal, and we could do it, but what we would have to give up is far more costly, in my opinion. And things have changed since then. When he developed that, we weren't planning on, we were looking at Campbell being debt-free energy.
Right, that's what I'm asking.
For quite a while.
Yeah.
Julie and I just recently went to a CEO roundtable talk with the CEO of MERS, and they're going to change their assumptions again. I think their rate of return assumptions at 7.35%, and looking at their investment strategy, it doesn't match up. They're going to lower it at some point, and the CEO told us that. And I kind of questioned her comfort level with an investment strategy that does not align with one of the core assumptions, and she never really answered the question. But yeah, it is what it is. But they're probably going to lower it to somewhere around 7%. We're going to see our unfunded liability grow significantly. The other thing to remember with a pension plan is no matter what their assumptions are, we're going to pay out what we're going to pay out. It's just a matter of how quick and at what pace based on their assumptions. But our liability is an actual number, and it seems to move quite a bit, but that's because their assumptions change. And over the last few years, well, a couple years ago, we finally got rid of the impacts of 2008 based on how they smooth things out in transition. So that fell off. So we're seeing better rates of return. We're outpacing their assumptions right now, but I think long term, they know that they're not going to be able to maintain that. We've recently started, or this past year, the three of us worked with our regional manager, I guess that's probably his title, or something to that effect, to give us some different trajectories. So we asked for an 8-year, a 10-year, and a 12-year trajectory to pay. What would our funding need to be to pay off, to fully fund our pension in 8 years, 10 years, and 12 years? And I think a realistic balancing it, the changing landscape with our generation, balancing changing in assumptions that significantly changed our unfunded liability over the last 2 years. I think we can have it funded in about 10 years without it being detrimental to progress on our system and capital investments back in our system. But I think we should be aggressive, but if we're over aggressive, we're going to be asking our current customers to ultimately pay for something that won't be paid out for many, many years. Obviously, you don't want to keep this unfunded liability just indefinitely, but I don't see a humongous benefit in paying it off in 5 years as compared to 10. I'll let Julie and Megan add any commentary that you guys see appropriate, but I feel like this approach is a little more realistic and gives us flexibility on an annual budgeting level, or at an annual budgeting process, we have some flexibility, but we always stay more aggressive than what they require, which is good to outpace what they require us to do. It gets it paid off, but it's not to the detriment of our other investments. So, I don't know if there's anything you guys want to add.
I agree with what you're saying. I definitely feel from just looking at everything that, like Felix members, that the approach that you mentioned, the 10-year, gives us money to reinvest in our system, and to us, we like that dual approach, to still do OPEB, but also do invest in our system.
been talking about this for almost 2 hours now. If we keep on this pace, we might be here for another 2 hours. Happy to touch on anything, and I'll stay all night. But want to make sure that we're touching on the items that you guys want us to touch on. I may start pushing a little bit. One item I do want to touch on is electric vehicle strategy.
I was just gonna ask.
All right.
Or,
I thought-
well, the charging stations.
Yeah.
But,
Yes.
okay.
And so electric vehicle strategy is kind of, I want to touch on it because it's very all-encompassing. We have a lot of irons in the fire that are very much related to an electric vehicle strategy. We do have the 2 units. I've been in conversations with Mike in the city about just some very initial conversations about the interest in DDA taking those over. So we've got the public charging. From a private charging, something that's on our radar is leveraging our line extension policy to provide level 2 home charging rebates to customers. Essentially looking at that EV charger as a new customer. So if you were to build a new house, we've run line extension with UFS's assistance. We've identified what that marginal revenue is going to be associated with that new customer, and that helps determine how much us as a utility we're willing to contribute to an individual, your home or somebody's new service. If you look at an EV charger, it's very similar, but it's a customer within a customer kind of. So looking at that marginal revenue that comes from an EV specifically to base a rebate on, that's things that we're looking at. It's very common practice for utilities. So that's part of an EV strategy. Time of use rates are the foundation of being ready for EVs. The fact that we probably have that customer very likely coming home and plugging up at 6 o'clock at night and being highly coincidental with our summer peak. That's not an effective strategy, obviously. So we do have a lot of irons in the fire, but this is one that there isn't going to be here's a master plan, because it's always moving, it's always changing. But you look at it from a rate standpoint, from a public charging standpoint, from a home charging standpoint, I think we're headed in the right direction. One of the things that we recently met with MPPA to discuss the new clean energy program that we'll be talking about at next month's board meeting, that's going to replace the EWR, and Franklin Energy was incorporating EV charging incentives, public charging incentives into that. So, and there's a lot of pieces to it, but it's also one of the reasons where we're not quite eager to replace the charger here. There may be additional funds available. Part of the EV strategy is to monitor federal funding. And I've learned quite a bit just participating in EV conferences, the difference between corridor charging and community charging, and just kind of the different considerations, different facets of an EV strategy that we need to consider. So that's one that doesn't got a lot of tangible results. It just may not be directly, might not have a big flashing light that says this is part of the EV strategy, but time use rates are right there. Some of the other items that we can work on. So I hope that answers your question.
I'm just, you guys, when those were first put in, I mean, you guys were on low light powers on the leading edge, and it would be great to see us, stay on the leading edge there. Yeah.
Those units are not.
They're not workable, right?
One of them is the level 2 charger is not available. The other one still does work, but it's time to replace them. But before we replace them, what's the structure that's going to be used to replace them? Are we going to continue to own them? Do we need to look for somebody else to own them? Are there incentives out there? Is there federal funding? What are all the pieces we need to pull together to get them to replaced? And unfortunately, right now, there's a lot in limbo at the federal level until we get more information on the build back better. Jeez, build back better. Thanks, politicians. Until we get more infrastructure information in the potentially could be a quick move, and we could wait a couple of months. It might be exact same, it might be far more, might be beneficial to wait, so.
I just didn't know, and I'm glad that was brought up because I love that Lowell is on the radar for us to, welcome our plug-in cars. I would like to throw out there that, of course, you know, everything's coming in after the first of the year, blah, blah, blah. But by June, I'd really like to have a final answer, either fix it, or yank them out, or what. I feel that I'd like to have it fixed by June.
I
No
don't
matter
see,
how.
I don't see any problem with that.
Okay.
I'd like to have it fixed yesterday.
Okay, good.
Personally,
good. I just don't want us to see a summer with people coming into town and us not having, so rock on, okay.
And
before June.
one of the things I will monitor, and the nice thing with the connectivity of the chargers is,
Yeah.
I can go on the ChargePoint website and check how often they're being used, what's the availability. We can really
Is it
start to,
working?
yeah, yeah, is it working?
Yeah, somebody get off the highway thinking they're gonna charge you and find out, oh,
Yeah.
they're busted down.
Well, they already have it pinged that it's not
Right,
working.
yes, exactly.
Yeah,
That's great.
it's reflected on the app, but I want to look at availability. You know,
But
it
I want it
changes.
to be a destination because of that point.
It changed, which the nice thing is we're still on the radar because we still have a working charger, and that's the biggest thing. If you talk to EV
Absolutely.
experts, it's get on the map. Because
Yeah.
people plan trips on
Around,
where they
yes.
charge. So only having one of two is not ideal, but having 0 instead of 1
Right.
is far worse than having 1 instead of 2. You know, it's only a 1 difference. That not being on the radar piece is the one that really is impactful. But to me, it needs to be, if it's going to be there, it needs to work.
Absolutely.
That's enough said.
An opportunity to bring it up, over, you know, to put in a new one or two, if there's a deal out there, definitely, I just want to throw out there that I'm very interested in that, to adding to District R2, they're always busy.
I think we as a council have been discussing the same thing too.
Oh,
We're
I think we're not.
Yep, where we're coming up with the funding and how many, you know, Cliff is all about EVs and he's
Definitely.
pushing that quite frequently as well too, so.
Right.
I guess I have a question. So the individual development plans, would that be an ongoing thing?
I'll be honest, I don't know exactly what that outcome is trying to accomplish. It was something that was on the list, and I kind of have my idea, but it's not, when I think of a plan, I think of a roadmap. And, you know, for me, it's more just a concentration and focus on development. You know, providing opportunities for training, access to training, access to conferences, you know, and I've been working with Anna some on a well-rounded development. You know, we're looking at we've got obviously industry-specific training, but what training can us as a group, you know, participate in that may not be directly geared towards electric, but is relevant to managing people or communicating with customers or just in general stuff. So I don't know exactly what the hope of the outcome was on that, but I think it's more, in my mind, it's more of an ongoing commitment to not being complacent in knowledge development or knowledge sharing. So I guess I'll
Yeah, that's kind of how I saw it. It's just you know, the focus on the staff development, and that there is a plan. I mean, it's not just some folks want to just keep doing what they're doing. Some folks want to have new challenges, and just making sure that. You know, 'cause I know for my company, we've lost people for both reasons. You know, some people just want to write code, and they're asked to charge for stuff, and they're like, I don't want to do that, and they leave. Others don't get an opportunity to go move up, and so they leave. You know. It's like, so just, but again, it all came down to just the fact that their boss wasn't listening. So,
Yeah.
And so that's really all that is just making, at least that's my interpretation of that, ensuring that each staff member knows their plan.
Yeah.
Another comment I had was we have the community collaboration section. We have like an industry collaboration section. I was thinking like you're involved like the MMBA, the board, or these things like generator working group or community. What's that group you had going?
Generation group.
Yeah. Those
I'll be honest, that's a brand new thought, so my initial reaction was, what a great idea. I want to make sure there's items in there that aren't already done.
Yeah,
I would love.
those are two things that are done.
Yeah, that's the thought, is I love making lists so I can check things off. You feel like, there's sometimes you feel very, I'm gonna write this on my to-do list so I can cross something off of my to-do list. But no, to do that here and there.
Yeah, but just, you were talking about some of the ED stuff or just the other, just, and then I think earlier someone was suggesting that we talk to folks who have those time of use billing systems. That's a smaller one, but I mean, it's just worth thinking of goals to put in there sometime and bring in industry collaboration.
I think just keeping a goal of, I know you've worked with Tom for a long time, but Tom's involvement with APPA has benefited Lowell Power immensely over the years. So I think it's important to keep that goal focused on making sure we put people where they can collaborate. Casey participated in the OSHA panel. He also participated in the Marijuana Regulatory Agency. I don't know what roundtable, focus group. But just I think it's good to keep a focus on making sure our people are in the right places, whether that's sitting on boards or engaging in focus groups or even conferences. Julie and I, when we started digging into this time of use, we posted up here for 2 days just to participate in a time of use conference. Just we weren't actively participating, but it was important to collaborate, whether it's one-sided collaboration, just stealing ideas, taking in ideas and reusing them, but putting ourselves where we're in touch with the industry. So
yeah, I think the rodeo would be in that category. And then, but then you mentioned Tom. I didn't see it. Should RP3 be one of the goals?
it's an ongoing one.
Right. But do we have it?
It's in the ongoing APPA RP3 Diamond recognition.
Well, yeah, that's a good category.
We could, but I think it's important. It was implemented in 19, but it's got to be re-implemented every 3 years.
Right.
That continued focus is important.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a weird one. It's ongoing, but it's also 3 years. So it's almost like a goal that keeps getting put back on there.
Yeah,
it's like can we get diamond again this next 3-year term?
So we'll move on to IT-related projects. I want to touch real quick on cybersecurity training. It's a gap that we have, and I bring it up because you all will be roped in, and we will need board support because you're part of anybody with an email will be in need of participating in cybersecurity training. So we've recently engaged a company called Know Before that is an online-based cybersecurity training company. I've used them in the past. I think the city of Marquette, somebody at the MMEA conference, or multiple people brought up this company. They're very, very private.
How do you spell that?
Know Before, KNOWBE, and then the number 4. But we're actively pursuing this, and I would project that we'll have something in place by January, February, and What will be involved in that will be some online training that you just have to watch videos, take tests, but it's also going to be a platform for fake phishing emails. So click the wrong link, and you'll know you clicked the wrong link. Yeah, but and that's something that I touch on it because you all will be getting these emails. We'll ask for participation. I was going to say,
You're gonna have to teach me how to click first.
I was going to say, Barry, you come up here when we're ready to implement it. I'll walk you through everything.
Well, now you tap, you don't click.
Yeah, but it's something that we need to be doing. It's typically a requirement for cybersecurity insurance just to even qualify for the insurance. So that's something that we need to be pursuing as well. But we've got to have some of these other items in place before we can really get that. So that, like I said, just want to touch on that briefly.
I know you're working on another issue too with the firewall, the overall IT
Yes.
coming on up, so I know it's not on this list, but it's pretty important.
Yeah, I'll touch, when you bring it up, I think it's a good topic to touch on. We've been working through a lot of phone system issues, ongoing. We talked about it some. What's come out of that is we're going to do a full network analysis because some vulnerabilities were made aware to, or not vulnerabilities, some considerations were made aware to us throughout the process, and we're looking to get some other opinions on just the structure, ways that we could protect ourselves, where we're potentially exposed, and I hesitate to provide too many details in a public setting because don't want to give away the playbook, but we will be we're going to be pursuing some upgrades and some needs to potentially evaluate some vendors and look at how we're meeting our overall IT needs. But yes, that's a high priority item that we've been working very closely with the city on for the last month and a half, 2 months. And it started as a phone issue and has grown into a more network network consideration. But I don't want to provide a false sense of security or a false sense of doom.
Right.
It's not either. It's just
fixable.
Yeah, it's just prudent evaluation and adjustments.
So the customer portal one, should that just be changed to the customer portal rollout? So I thought this was created because we needed to kind of fix what we have, and now we're fixing it by replacing it.
Yeah, and it's one of the things we haven't updated because it is an active project, but I'll let.
Coming soon.
Take it away, Russ. Oh, sorry. Sorry. Yeah, if anybody doesn't know Christmas Vacation, I apologize.
Yes, we are in the middle of training, in the middle of testing, in the middle of all of the things that happen before you roll out a new portal. We've had several trainings, several meetings about it. The soft go live date is December 7th, where they're going to take a lot of information at its current place and send it electronic decoded over to the new place, and then the new place has to then upload it into our new portal.
I can't wait till December 7th.
So don't.
That scares me.
Huh?
Yeah.
Because that's the last day of Medicare sign-ins, and hopefully all the commercials will leave TV.
You know, if you're not eligible, you ignore them. You don't know that they're there.
Okay.
It's only because of your age why you notice it.
So yeah, there's a lot of great things that the new portal is going to provide to the customer. There's a lot of changes, a lot of new things the customer service reps are going to have to learn, a lot of great enhancements that will provide the customer a better atmosphere, a better, you know, when they go on and they can choose a lot of things, and they're very user-friendly, I guess, is what I really like about them. I kind of use the example of, my kids are getting a little bit older, but I get on a mission, like, okay, I'm logging onto the site, I'm here to pay. And a lot of the sites, the first thing that, you know, can you want to sign up for this? Do you want to sign up for this? Do you want to sign up for this? It's like, no, if I don't pay this bill, it's going to be late because my kid's going to interrupt me and I will not get there. Well, our site has where, do you want to sign up for an e-bill here at the beginning? And then when you're looking at how much you owe, do you want to sign up for all these different things? They prompt you at all these different times, and whenever your brain, it works for your brain, you have all those choices to then pick at that time. So you can enroll in e-bill, you can enroll in text to pay, you can enroll in auto pay, you can have all these choices. But you don't have to do it when they think your mind, you know, your mind, it works for your mind to apply for all these things. And if a customer calls in and wants to try the text pay, we can type in their phone number and it can send them a message and they can start it that way. So some people, I think, will interact with it. Some people won't know it exists until we put their phone number in. So different things are very exciting and coming down the tubes. It's just the fear of the unknown, I guess. We don't know how it's all going to happen. We don't know who's going to like what, or we don't know what's going to work, what's going to break, what's going to. So we're excited, very hopeful. We're very we want it to be passed and start sharing it with everyone to use. So.
Yeah, I think some of the high level pieces that are important is we did, you know, we'll remind you, it's not the visual appeal is very underwhelming. We've told them that it's not, and Megan, you were the first one to use that word. I was really underwhelming. But when you look at the functionality, when you look at, you know, how user friendly it is, it's very intuitive. You know, you've got a bar, you got like a table of contents on the left. You click on it, you know exactly what you're trying to do. It brings it up. There's no guessing or going from here to here to here to here. The worst thing is you have to establish a payment method before you can use that payment method in a reoccurring payment. You know, little things like that, but for the most part, it's very user friendly. Some of the enhancements that you kind of touched on, but the text to pay is never something we've had. You'll be able to get a text message that says, do you want to pay your bill through a text message? You've got stored credit card, stored bank account. I don't know exactly how it'll work, but you know, I've used them elsewhere. You get a text, here's your bill's ready. Do you want to pay? Reply yes. Or reply Y. You send that back, it prompts, do you want to use this account? Yes. You know, so we're going to be giving our customers new ways of doing business with us. And that's one of the things that I think is important. It goes back to your talk of a monopoly. A monopoly tells you how you're going to do business with us. A non-monopoly says, how do you want to do business with us? And then we try and accommodate. And that's what we're trying to do with this, is not assume we know how the customers want to deal with them, you know, do business with us, but provide them optionality. And that's a big thing. Customers will be able to pay with Google Pay and Apple Pay, which is
So
pay
Optionality?
yes. That's not a word.
I don't know, that's cool.
I'm questioning it now.
Let's look
You can use it in Scrabble.
I gotta Google that later.
Optionality.
quick question for you. So
I'm grabbing the dictionary.
with
Might be a hyphen, might be a
that
hyphen in there.
portal, because some customers come and pay their water bill and electric bill all together, will they be able to do that? So it's gonna
They
only
write
be
a check,
electric?
you mean?
Huh?
They write a check, you mean?
No, so with the portal, you know,
Can't pay at the portal with their electric and water.
okay,
They have to go to our website and pay their electric. They have to go to the city's website to pay the water.
and we are continuing the philosophy of not having a surcharge if it's on a credit card,
Yes.
which the city
Does.
does, correct?
believe
I don't know.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons. So we don't let, even if a customer walks in we don't absorb the city's credit card fees.
Correct.
So
Don't
if,
take-
yeah, so if a customer comes and wants to pay with a credit card in person, we don't take water payments from credit card here because we would incur a cost to.
We used to do that.
Yes.
And then, and people caught on, so they would always pay their bill here because the city would charge a service charge for using a credit card,
Yeah.
which I think is, whatever. I disagree with it, so.
Yeah, that, we're gonna say, I'll ask them to say the same.
Good. I just curious.
Yeah.
All right,
So that's one of the things,
Yeah.
in a few months or whatever, we think it's finally up and running.
you know, but it's one of those things because it's got that word enhancement. We everybody here embraces a continual improvement. So you're never done, but it'll be marked complete. And you move on,
Yeah.
but it'll still be a focus to continue because there's other things that Portal can do
Yeah.
that we've chosen to say not now.
But that would be called their leveraging data system.
It may be, yes. But yes, we'll continue, and there's things that we've just said, no, we don't want to implement that right now. It's got an option to do like in-stream donation collection. So if, we could promote the A+ program through the portal potentially if that's something we want to explore. So there are future enhancements that could continue to be utilized, but we've chosen to focus on the core of making it work. So the enhancement piece will still be there, but yeah, we'll probably move this, we're gonna call this completed and just know that there are things that will continue to focus on enhancements.
Okay, yeah, 'cause I kind of thought the intent was just because the current one was
Yes.
kind of lacking, and so it was like, we gotta fix
Oh,
it.
we did improve it.
So I think, yeah, we
So we replaced it. All right, so I was just gonna kind of skip over the community collaboration, but happy to answer any questions if there's any questions on that section. Hearing none, we'll move on. We can always go back. Safety-related items, the ongoing, the increased communication to the board. I wanted to touch on that because it is something new. We have incorporated an update in the managers meeting on a monthly basis, and that's been the big focal point of that. But we will continue to update. We're looking at policies on who works alone, who doesn't work alone. Ryan and I have talked, so we'll make sure we communicate that with the board as we make safety-related changes. We'll make sure we continue to keep the board apprised of those changes. So, Lowell Light and Power Safety Committee has been formed, and they're kind of taking off running, I guess. It's kind of it's kind of a self-directed group in terms of letting that group have some say in what we're doing, what we're promoting. They're kind of focused on a variety of different things right now. One of the topics that they're promoting and focusing on is our employee assistance program. We pay for an employee assistance program that my understanding was implemented pretty close to right before COVID, maybe.
Yeah.
So with COVID, it was very disruptive, so we're getting back into trying to make sure our employees are aware of it, families are aware of it. So that committee's been established and is doing great. And the West Michigan Safety Roundtable is one that we've kind of, I won't say put on hold, but it's heavily reliant on other people wanting to participate and how much time we have to dedicate to it. Ron had participated in work with Dig It to do some safety stuff with them. So don't know where this will go, but Ron's also I think looking towards retirement at this point. So this probably doesn't make a whole lot of sense to really invest a ton of time into it, but I do think there's merit if it can get off the ground and running. And really the goal of this is to bring safety discussions and discourse from outside of our utility into our utilities. So it's kind of just a strategy of how do we just stay in tune with what's going on from a safety standpoint, and not necessarily are we following the rules, because we're following rules, but what lessons can be learned from other utilities? Close calls, near misses, accidents, and so that's kind of the motivation behind that. But then as far as facilities, I think all of these we've had lots of conversations about, so happy to provide any updates. The one we talked about least is the soil gas mitigation. That provided an update last board meeting that we've signed the contract and we're actively pursuing getting that issue resolved. So.
And regarding the line shack, you're probably looking at early 2022 for things to move forward with the development. I know we had it as 2021, but.
Oh, I didn't notice the date on that.
No, it's all right. I mean,
Yes.
that's how long ago it was.
Yeah, we started in 2021. Yes. Yeah, we started that process
Yeah,
at the end of last fiscal year. So, with that, any other questions on the strategic plan and stuff?
So do we need something about power? That's kind of.
Yeah, that's the only other, I didn't add that, but that was the one item I wanted to add is a post-coal fuel supply plan.
Yeah.
That's really what's driving a lot of it. That's a 2028 date. End of 2028 is when Bell River's scheduled to be done, burning coal, and we're still, everything with Campbell is still up in the air until the MPSC case is done. But yes, we definitely need to add that to the list. So the changes that we were recommending, we're adding that, removing the island mode operation for the generation facility, and removing the OMS system and calling the feasibility study complete at this point. But those were the recommended changes. If the board so chooses to take formal action in adopting those today, you're welcome to. We can wait until February when we have a more formal update of it, where this was more of a review. But I did want to at least highlight the changes that we're either good with now or will be recommending in February. It doesn't change our actions any if we leave them there until February and make one update a year.
So I don't know where, I was looking at what heading that you put this under, but I would like to add routine policy reviews, updates, so that, you know, we were doing it, and I'd like to continue to do it, that we just look at our policy book and take this item and it doesn't have to be in depth. I mean, it could be just, we reviewed this, you know, this, like each meeting or whatever, we just take a policy and just review it and make sure that it's up to date and it meets today's optics.
Yeah.
I don't know where you put that under.
I'll put that under administrative and financial items. But I think that'd be a good thing to add.
Anything else? So consensus, you want to just, do you want to vote on this, or do you just want, I mean, February's not that,
I'm fine with February.
I'm fine with February too.
It's simple.
I mean, I think we've had a good discussion tonight. Okay, so we'll move on to item C.
All right, so this is following the city council meeting last week, I believe. Somebody, you're shaking your head, you were there.
Yeah.
I think it was last city council meeting.
Oh, yeah, the 15th.
It was asked about that, about the Rotary doing the lighting, and we hadn't heard anything to that point, which is something they initiated. So I just kind of made a statement that, you know, Rotary hasn't engaged us on this. Well, the next day, Sue Olery happens to be the current president of Rotary, so president was hearing it, and I got an email from Patrick Doyle, who's very involved, the next day, asking, hey, can we make this happen? So if you give me a letter, I'll happily bring it to the board. You know, we were supportive of the event. It was a great event. It was well received in the public, and
I read the letter, but, and either I missed it, but there was no end.
Dollar amount.
There was no end amount of what they were asking for, or what we're comfortable with.
This is how the event has evolved over time, I think, in trying to get something together for this. Is, you know, the first year it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Julie, we talked about this a little bit. I wasn't here for the first year, and I was real green behind the ears second year it was done. But first year it was based on how many entries, and it was kind of a maximum number, or maximum amount that exceeded our $1,000 by policy to one organization. Last year we scrapped that and said, let's not worry, do it per, let's just write the check for the $1,000 and commit the full benevolence amount per policy to this organization. It's a great cause. They do great things with the money. So from my recollection, last year it was, let's not worry about how many, let's just
A flat amount.
Let's just give them the flat amount. You know, from our perspective, from my perspective, I think this was a great event. It's something that I know it's on my goals list for myself, and the board provided me to engage with Rotary, and out of this, I'm actually going to attend Rotary next Wednesday as Patrick's guest. So, you know.
So you can give them the
Check.
That's what I'm hoping. You guys got it.
So is there any further discussion? I mean, I would entertain a motion, just as, you know, the flat $1,000. Well,
I
someone.
mean, no, your motion.
No, I've come to, and I guess technically I can, but I've always been comfortable of running and having other board members make the motion.
I'll make the motion that we cut the check for 1,000, is it what you said?
Yeah, that's our policy.
Yep.
Yeah, that's the max per policy.
Okay, support.
Okay, it's been moved, supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, I missed this when we were looking at the, and technically, I don't know, I want to add something. I didn't realize that there wasn't board comments on our agenda, so I'd like to add board comments right now. And, Craig, anything?
Let's see. I want to thank the front office staff for doing a good job and staying strong during some adversity.
Tina will pass.
Tina? Dan?
I'm happy to see time of use. I think it's a big step for ratepayers to have that option to control their cost of electricity, adjust their usage based on the needs. And maybe it won't get adopted by everybody, but I think we can have some churn.
Andrew?
I agree, I'm excited about time of use, that was really an interesting presentation. Looking forward to future staff training presentations, I would enjoy those. And the other thing I wanted to add, so I think 1 or 2 meetings ago I made a comment about, it's great to have the staff here and kind of engage. I think it was the, I don't think that name, auditor.
Oh, Peter was here.
You made a comment about such an engaged board, and points to the whole table, and like, well, most of the table is staff, you know? But then it was interesting tonight, I like, there's a time when we were having some discussion about, like the time of use in the kind of building or whatever, and I remember Julie made a comment, I think Good made some comment, and Julie said to you like, well, I need you to tell me of this, and I'm like, it's really cool that the staff members feeling comfortable kind of telling the board what they need them to do, right? I mean, that was, I thought that was a I can't remember what it was you needed to do or what that was about, I just remember that comment. But I thought it was really cool, it's like, hey, that's kinda neat, the staff's actually willing to tell the board, hey, I need you to do this for me. So, that's cool, I think we're doing well if we're getting to that, we're at that level of discussion, so I'm really pleased to hear that and hope it continues.
Couple things that I have, and I've been amiss because I haven't done it, and so I'm reminding everybody. So if you, and when you said RP3, Andrew, I think it brought back to my mind. So if any of you serve on any other boards or do anything else, like I know you're on the, Craig, you're on the Felsberg and Historical Society and everything, it's important that you get that information to Lisa, because we, an active board gives us more points in the RP3, and so don't, I mean, it's not something that she's got to have tomorrow, but, you know, over the weekend or whatever, if you just either email her or write it down, what boards you're on, how many, and I, you know, in general, how many years or whatever, if you get that information to her, because that's, she sent out an email some time ago wanting that, and I'm just reminding myself and the rest of us. The other is, I really, maybe you're not, I think we're ready for it, but I'd really like to have our meeting at our next meeting at the Energy Center.
Yes, I'd like to have with Orion, the December meeting.
Sure.
I think we will, that packet will be coming out next week, next Friday. Better not be this Friday, 'cause I'm not ready.
No, but you're not here this Friday, you're here the next Friday,
Yes,
so the
next
Friday you're here.
next Friday, I would like to, I think it'd be great to have it at the Energy Center. I think we're to that point. We were waiting, the last piece was parking lot construction. So yes, I think we are ready to roll. Looking for a very confident nod, yes.
It's just as good as this room.
No, I was gonna say, you know, from a technology standpoint, I didn't know where if you guys had the TV up and tried it.
Yeah.
That's the last piece, is making sure we got the technology to put it there. We got an awesome TV, but I've not actually seen it on, so.
Whoever's gonna control it with an iPad was double checking to make sure it works, but we've been using it for all kinds of stuff, same thing.
Awesome.
It's set up the same way as this, it's just a TV.
Same color room.
Yeah.
Concrete floors though,
That's it.
polished concrete.
That's gravel right now.
And that's really the, everybody stay safe, and have a happy Thanksgiving. Anything to add?
Nope, I want to thank Megan for joining us. It's been a while since we've had Megan in the boardroom. She's not at home with a newborn baby tonight, and I just want to acknowledge that. Thank her for being here. I've enjoyed it. I know, as you mentioned, I know the board like that, staff here, and I just wanted to recognize the new mom at the table.
So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll support.
It's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
So unofficial business that I totally forgot.